Call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Lakewood, Colorado on January 8th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in Chambers. Will the clerk please call roll?
Hall.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Vita.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Gutwein.
Here.
LeBeur.
Here.
Billing.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Royball.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Well, Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for coming out to this first meeting of 2018. Couple of notes before we go into the Pledge of Allegiance. We have our wonderful team from Channel 8 here taking a little extra video this evening for Keys to the City. So if you were hoping you'd be on the 10 o'clock news, you probably won't be. But we may see you in an upcoming feature on Channel 8. So with that, I'd ask if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, remain standing for a moment of silent prayer, and be nice if we could all just keep in our thoughts and prayers our law enforcement officers throughout the metro area, especially in Douglas County. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Margie, will you read the next?
Item 4, presentation 2017 Colfax Marathon.
This is always a fun one, so I'd like to call down the CEO of the Colfax Marathon, Miss Andrea Dowdy, to come. And I think you have some guests, some swag, maybe some awards. All of the good stuff. So this is always a fun night, and we're glad to have you here, and it's all you.
Great. Good evening. Thanks so much for having us here this evening, and I'd like to just kick it off by introducing Brandy Lappy from Kaiser Permanente.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, now everybody get up and jog in place. I'm just kidding. I'm happy to be here with you tonight to represent Kaiser Permanente. And, whoops, sorry, this is my first time. All right. We're pleased to be here because we believe events such as the Colfax Marathon are ways to help Coloradans and City of Lakewood employees and residents be healthy. So for Kaiser Permanente, events like this are a great investment in our region. The Colfax Marathon gets Coloradans healthy, and it builds economic vitality for businesses and communities along the route. In addition to the Colfax Marathon, Kaiser Permanente invests in communities where City of Lakewood employees and residents live, work, and play. For instance, we're one of the largest employers in the Colorado region with over 7,000 staff and 1,000 physicians. We are a strong partner on the municipal, state, and federal level to get uninsured Coloradans coverage. And we have the privilege of serving over 450 City of Lakewood employees with Kaiser Permanente coverage. So this year, we hope the City of Lakewood teams will be back to participate in the Colfax Marathon. I hope some of you were part of the marathon last year. Oh, yeah, okay, good. And this is a friendly issue to issue a challenge to other cities and counties to get everybody active and engaged in the marathon. So thank you.
I always think it's great fun to stand at the finish line because everybody comes by and I can, all of a sudden it's like, wait, there's Mayor Paul. Wait, here comes Karen. So thanks so much for participating. For those of you who are new about the Colfax Marathon, just want to give you a quick mini history. We're actually in year 13, and the marathon was started by the cities of Denver, Lakewood, Aurora, because Colfax is 26 miles long, and that was the original year when we ran point to point. Runners said, oh, that's not as much fun, so we changed it up a little bit. Now we have 39 miles of courses going on Sunday, and that's a half marathon course, and then we have the course coming out to Lakewood, which is the marathon relay, and then the urban 10-miler, which starts at REMCAD. So it's been great fun. We have now 19,000 runners, so we went from 4,000 in the early years and have just grown radically. A lot of those runners raising money for charity. So every year we have about 200 charities that use us to raise funds and awareness. And I'm happy to say over the last 5 years, they've raised about $2 million for themselves, and they keep all the money they raised, which is really fun. So talking about the relay a little bit, we have one of the largest relays in the country. We have about 1,300 teams. Of that, we have 800 that are corporate and government. And they're out there running for bragging rights. They're out there running for fun. But at the end of the day, they're running for money. A little bit different with Colfax. You know, we're Colfax. We love to be different and we love to be unique. So we do that the same way with our race. Instead of giving our money to the elite athletes that win the marathon or half marathon, we give them to relay teams in the construction division or the healthcare, accounting, government employees. You guys have won races before and given money. And when you receive the money, you turn around and give it to charity. So every year now we give over $100,000 in prize money to charities via these winning relay teams, and there's about 60 awards. So it's been really fun. We have to tell you that this year we even have a division. We started it 2 years ago called the Public School Teacher Division. And every year, I got to say, Jeffco Schools has some winning teams, and this year I do believe that Bear Creek K-8 is in Lakewood, and they won money for their school, and they win $1,000 when they win. So it's great fun. We're all about the money, we're all about the fun, and we're all about the charitable and the giving back to the communities. So I'm here tonight really to thank Lakewood for all the work that you guys have done over the years. It's just been terrific. I have a wonderful plaque. Hold on. This is actually the plaque with the medal inside, but I call it your best desk toy ever because you can play along the way. But just to give you an idea of the things that Lakewood does every year for us is just in terms of entertainment, Nina Rockley has just been terrific since day one with the marathon. She entertains runners at Rockley Music. They have an exchange zone there where if you're in the relay, remember high school, you have to pass the baton. You do it out by Rockley Music, and she's always been just terrific to work with. We love running through the Glens. All the neighbors are out handing out oranges. It's really wonderful. And Morse Neighborhood Association and Two Creeks have been around since the beginning and provided things like water stations or candy, which runners love, or other things along the way. We also want to thank REMCAD because they allow us to start our urban 10-miler race there. We have about 1,300 runners that start there, which is terrific. And I think you get to be on the mic that race morning, entertaining all the runners. So it's a great Sunday of races, and then we appreciate everybody who runs the 5K on Saturday. That's just a great fun race. And for those of you who say, I want to train this year, but I want to train more laid back. That's our 5K. Bring your dog. Yeah, you guys really.
Where's our award?
You got your award. You got an award. But we really appreciate that. So thank you so much. Then I'd like to thank two other entities. So I think I've got, first of all, Sergeants Blackbird and Hoover. And we have Nathan with us too tonight? Just the two of you, right? Come on down. These guys have been great. We really, for us, for 39 miles of runners, you know, you stand at the start and finish in City Park, and to know that you've got runners out all over these cities, and to know that in Lakewood, you know, we've got them so well taken care of, not only with the police department, but also with the volunteers. It's terrific. Oh yeah, come on over. You gotta come over. Wait. Hardware. Got to get to hardware. But it's just absolutely wonderful. And my favorite call, I have to tell you, for the last few years has been when one of these guys calls me at the end of the race and said, hey, Sergeant Hoover here, we're all good. And it's just a wonderful feeling. And it's wonderful that our runners are so well protected. So thank you so much, you guys. But, you know, you can't leave without a little bit of swag, too, right? So we've got some hats and sunglasses. You got to wear that Colfax proud.
They don't even flash with the uniform. That's awesome.
All right. Oh, wait, luggage tag. That's great. Oh, wait.
Thank you.
The other group I'd love to thank is the West Metro Fire. I think Dean Wall is here tonight, correct? Oh. Well, we'll save him a hat, but I just want to say that as you run, and if you're a marathon runner, as you're leaving Denver and you're running into Lakewood, you'll see two huge ladder trucks, one Denver, one Lakewood, with the American flag hanging down. And it's just absolutely spectacular when you're a runner to have that patriotic feel going on the course. But, you know, that takes West Metro Fire really getting out there that morning, getting us a truck, you know, working with Denver, and the runners so appreciate that. So it's terrific. Dean Wall, we love to thank. He's been around for years, and he's the one who brought, for years, the firefighters to the finish line to hand out medals. So again, he's just been a terrific person and a terrific asset to the marathon over the years. So I don't think he's been able to make it, but know that he will get a hat, sunglasses, and the whole 9 yards as well. So thank you so much. We hope to see you out there. 5K is great. Full marathon, any takers? Mike, I don't know you, but it's your year, right? Oh, next year. But thank you so much, and thank you for really supporting all these runners as they raise money for charity and really strive to have health and fitness.
All right. So, Andrea, yes. Thank you to the marathon, and as you heard, Kaiser Permanente is a wonderful sponsor of this great event. And the Fun 5K is on Saturday, so I think all of council could do that. And I guess we could try to do a real relay team this year if Ms. Hodson jumps in as well. Counselor Skilling, you're in. All right. Who else? We're close.
Got me in.
All right, we have a relay team.
As long as Kathy's in.
We'll work on it. But in all seriousness, it is a great event. When we were at the 5K Fun Run, Girls on the Run was down there with all kinds of school-aged girls learning independence and running, and it was really cool to see all the effort and all the families out there. And I'll tell you, our police, not only do they keep the runners safe and the pedestrians safe and the motorists, but I had the opportunity to be with Sergeant Hoover when we got called to one of the motels during the run and saw some things I wish I'd never had seen in my life. So not only are they making sure everybody's safe, but they're continuing to make sure that the city of Lakewood is safe all along our wonderful West Colfax corridor, which has a little bit of everything to offer. So thank you again. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you in May. All right, thank you. The next item, please.
Item 5, presentation, Public Procurement Council Sterling Award recognition of purchasing staff.
All right, this is fun. This is a great tribute to the hardworking folks here in the city of Lakewood. I'm going to invite Mr. Keith Ashby down to come on down and talk to us a little bit, and I think we have some folks who are going to join us and get some hardware.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. My name is Keith Ashby. I'm purchasing manager from Arapahoe County. I'm also past president for the National Institute of Government Purchasing and also now the president of the local chapter of the Rocky Mountain Governmental Purchasing Association. The city of Lakewood has received the 2017 Agency Certification Award from the Universal Public Procurement Council. The award is an annual recognition for which qualifying agencies must apply every year for consideration. The city's purchasing division has received the Agency Certification Award for the 6th consecutive year. And that's very, very important. It's something to be recognized here. This award recognizes the agency and the purchasing staff are dedicated to maintaining the highest level of education and certification in the small agency category. 100% of qualifying purchasing staff must be certified by the UPPCC to receive this award. There are only 2 agencies that have received this in Colorado, and it was, Arapahoe County was one several years ago, and now the city of Lakewood. And so it is with my honor that I would like to recognize the staff from the purchasing. Come on.
Come on down.
Come on down. It is with great pleasure and honor that I present this to you guys for your outstanding certification, your efforts and education, and the work you do for the city and making sure that everybody is safe. Because people don't realize exactly what all is involved in purchasing. So I'm pretty sure now that they know how hard you work, you'll be able to show them.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Keith, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
You know how difficult it is to get this award, so
Yes.
Much appreciated that you traveled all the way from Aurora over here to us.
Littleton, really. But
Littleton, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Day and age, it's all-
It's all good.
It's all in Metro area. So, Mayor Paul, City Council, just wanted to tell you how much we appreciate your support as we embrace the council's core values: fiscal responsibility, open and honest communication as a transparent government. That's really important to us, and that's part of our values and ethics that we agree to when we receive our certifications. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our staff. Here we have Larry Dorr, the Finance Director. Adrian Stanchu is our Purchasing and Property Manager. Cheryl Dye is Buyer 2. Tobin Erksleben is also a Buyer 2. And Mary O'Halloran and Crystal Gonzaiden are also part of our staff but weren't able to join us tonight. So once again, it's very much an honor to receive this award, and we thank you for your support. Well done. All right. Thank you. Let's take a picture here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate all your hard work. Mr. Dorr, thank you. I forgot to mention when we were talking about the relay, Vanessa Zarate is our employee representative on the Colfax Marathon Board and helps keep the city of Lakewood in the loop and coordinate everything. So thank you, Vanessa, for your hard work. I think she stepped out. So before we go to public comment, I'm going to move things around a little bit. There's been a lot of interest in the Denver Federal Center and the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And Ms. Hodson has invited Mr. John Parvinsky from Colorado Coalition to come out tonight. This will just be a quick update for the council, for the community, because it was not something that we had or were able to get on the agenda. We'll make sure that we have all the contact information given out tonight. And then if this project proceeds, we will have the coalition back to have questions, a full-blown study session, and community engagement. So, Mr. Parvinsky, good evening and welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. It's a pleasure to be able to present what we feel is an exciting opportunity for the city, the county, and our state. I'm John Parvinsky, and for the past 32 years, I've served as the president and CEO of the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. The Coalition is a nonprofit organization that provides integrated health care, housing, and employment, and other support services to more than 18,000 individuals and families each year throughout the state. We've been working over the last 33 years throughout the state and in conjunction with other agencies here in Lakewood and Jefferson County, directly providing services to families and individuals. Now, the coalition applied to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services just on December 22nd to acquire the Federal Center Station property. Now, this is the 59-acre parcel owned by the federal government and managed by the General Services Administration, or the GSA. It's located immediately north of the Federal Center RTD station, and is a property that was declared surplus by GSA in 2016 and was initially declared unsuitable to assist the homeless by HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, in October of 2016. The coalition filed legal action to overturn HUD's initial determination and succeeded in determining that the property was indeed suitable to assist the homeless in accordance with Title V of the Stewart B. McKinney Act. Now, under Title V, federal properties that are surplus must be made available by lease or deed to organizations to assist the homeless as a first priority. Now, while HUD determines whether a surplus property is suitable to assist the homeless, the Department of Health and Human Services reviews and approves applications from eligible organizations for proposed uses to serve that homeless population. Now, since the property is owned by the federal government and is a federal resource, HHS has the sole authority to approve this application to use the property in accordance with Title V. We have outreached to a number of officials here in Lakewood and Jefferson County in order to get input on our proposal, but these officials, you all have no role in the actual decision to transfer the property, as that is a federal matter. But we want to keep you informed in what we're proposing. Now, GSA and HHS have both determined that organizations can only apply to acquire the full 59 acres under Title V, and it will not accept applications for only a portion of the site. Title V also requires that the property be solely used to assist persons who are defined as homeless, families and individuals, and children. The coalition's application to acquire the property is currently under review by HHS. They have asked for some clarifications, and we will provide those additional information by the end of this week. And we are proposing a two-phased use and redevelopment of the site. In phase one, we will use the property to create a campus of emergency and transitional housing and services for homeless families and individuals, using temporary structures constructed or placed on the site by the coalition. This will allow us to work with other human service agencies in the county and in the city to meet the emergency immediate needs of families and individuals here while completing the planning for the second phase of the development. In phase two, we will replace the temporary structures with newly constructed permanent buildings to be used as permanent supportive housing, permanent affordable housing, transitional housing, and other supportive services for families and individuals who are homeless. The area north of 4th Avenue and up to 6th Avenue we will use as a solar energy collection farm to provide energy for the proposed uses during both phases of the project, as well as providing job training for homeless individuals. Now, during phase one, we'll use a combination of manufactured housing, such as FEMA trailers, geodesic dome structures, and larger insulated tent structures to provide emergency and transitional housing for homeless families and individuals. Additional temporary structures will be used to provide support services, including counseling, employment and vocational services, and integrated health services. Now, I've heard rumors that some folks think that we want to create a tent city on the site. This is not accurate. We are not proposing a tent city on the site. We are proposing to use a number of temporary structures for emergency shelter, transitional housing, and support services. But only families enrolled in the program will be able to reside on the site, and referrals for the program will need to come from local human service agencies and through the Metro-wide One Home Coordinated Intake and Assessment System. Now, the container housing structures will have individual bathrooms and showers. There'll be community bathrooms and showers for those residing in the emergency shelters. And the coalition is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all program participants and to ensure that the site during phase one will be limited by fencing and access will be limited by security personnel. Now, in phase two, we propose to construct 5 mixed-use apartment buildings on the site to provide housing for up to 600 units of housing for transitional and permanent supportive housing for families and individuals, with community spaces and social services on the first levels. These 4-story structures will be very similar to the apartment buildings that we have constructed in other parts of the Metro Denver area, including our most recently completed development at 40th and Colorado Boulevard in Denver, the Renaissance at North Colorado Station. We have developed more than 1,800 units of housing in the Metro Denver area over the past 20 years, including the Renaissance at Concord Plaza development at 17th and Kendall Street here in Lakewood. We pride ourselves in developing quality housing for formerly homeless families and individuals, and in helping those individuals become productive members of the community. in in designing the properties to look like and operate like market rate housing. Now, we've been working with agencies here in Jefferson County and in Lakewood to obtain input on the priority needs for the homeless population to help support this proposal. We'll continue to work with these agencies to implement a successful redevelopment of the site while helping address the increased homelessness here in the county. We plan to give priority to Jefferson County residents for the emergency and long-term housing and services at this site. We plan to conduct meetings with the general public here in Lakewood as soon as HHS approves our application for the site. And we will form an advisory committee of interested persons to work with us to provide ongoing input into the development. We also hope to work in partnership with you all, with the mayor, with the city as a whole to make this a successful project. We think that this is a unique opportunity to address the growing crisis of homelessness here in Lakewood and in Jefferson County. According to the recent point-in-time count, there are 394 individuals, 244 families that were counted as homeless on a single night in January of last year. And we estimate that the actual number of people experiencing homeless during the course of the year is 2.5 times that amount, so over 1,000 individuals in Jefferson County. Indeed, the Colorado Department of Education estimates that there are 2,700 homeless children alone in the Jefferson County School District. As the housing market continues to become less affordable to low-income families here throughout the state, and particularly here in Jefferson County and in Lakewood, the coalition is working to meet immediate and long-term needs by helping these families and individuals by creating supportive housing, integrated health care, and employment for families and individuals, including homeless veterans. Over the last 3 decades, we believe that we have proved that providing affordable and supportive housing and health care helps our communities provide safe environments for children to learn, for adults to receive medical treatment, and for many individuals who have experienced trauma to receive much-needed behavioral and mental health services. Such housing and services also reduce the unnecessary taxpayer costs of emergency services, including police, courts, emergency room, hospital costs, detox, and other emergency service costs. We believe the Federal Center property provides a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a new development to make Lakewood a community where everyone has a safe place to call home and an opportunity to thrive. We look forward to working with you and the mayor, all of the city council members over the next few months and the next few years to make this a successful project. And we're glad to be partners with you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravinsky. For those up here as well as those in the audience, could you give some contact information?
Sure. You can reach us at coloradocoalition.org or at 303-293-2217.
We appreciate you coming out, and again, this will just be just a quick update for the community tonight, and we'll go further in depth upon the HHS decision as to what will take place.
Thanks for the
Thank you
opportunity.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Hodson?
May I just add that Mr. Parvinsky gave us a copy of the statement that he just made. So the city clerk will distribute that to you, and we'll make sure that's posted on the website tomorrow. And also a 5-page document just referring to what he just spoke of with pictures. And again, we'll make sure that this is posted. Each of you will have a hard copy, and this will be posted again on the website, just FYI.
Great. Thank you. Next item is public comment. This is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the city council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the city council. I ask that all in attendance observe the decorum of the city council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. Everybody will have 3 minutes. This little black box up here will be green for 2.5. At 2.5, it'll go yellow, and when your time is up, it'll go red, and we'll politely try to move you on. I know there's some folks here who signed up to speak on item 2017-17. we'll have a separate public hearing on that later on in the evening. So first up on the roster is Mr. Cortland Coffey. Good evening.
Evening. How are you guys doing? Good. All right. My name is Cortland Coffey. I'm a young father, resident, business owner here in Lakewood, Colorado. I'm here today in regards to the campaign finance proposal being forwarded by Councilman Charlie Abel. Mr. Abel has said that he wants to ensure fairness and transparency when it comes to how our local campaigns are financed. And I want to say that I agree. Transparency and fairness are values that I share. However, I am concerned that those may not actually be the motivations behind Councilman Abel's proposal. My fear is that these proposed solutions are actually veiled efforts to control and silence positions that Mr. Abel and other members of council disagree with. It's no secret that large sums of money from PACs and independent expenditure organizations were spent on both sides in the most recent Lakewood election. It's also clear that thousands of dollars were poured into organizations that helped fund the Strategic Growth Initiative, the SGI ballot proposal. Some of these organizations have public ties to members of council. This flies in the face of the stated public position of Councilman Abel, who has repeatedly stated on the record that he did not know where he stood on this issue. Take, for example, the more than $20,000 that has been donated to the SGI effort from a nonprofit called Lakewood Neighborhood Partnerships. In our current rules, where that money comes from doesn't have to be disclosed. But I've recently discovered that the website for Lakewood Neighborhood Partnerships is actually registered under Councilman Abel's name. This becomes an interesting link that potentially ties Councilor Abel to both this anti-growth initiative and, by his own definition, the flow of dark money into the campaigns. The hypocrisy of this isn't lost on myself or anybody else. I started Leadership Lakewood during this last election cycle to oppose these types of anti-growth efforts in Lakewood. Many of my peers believe that this half-baked approach to growth proposed by the backers of the SGI are not only dangerous, but a regressive way to deal with growth in our community. Proposals like SGI will eventually limit access to myself and families like myself to access attainable housing, as well as hurt small businesses. These businesses that are a key part in our local economy. In conjunction with Leadership Lakewood's grassroots donors, we did receive several large donations, which enabled our group to spread our message. These donors didn't control the message, but the funds gave local residents a voice against unnamed funding sources that were backing the Strategic Growth Initiative and the efforts to pass SGI. The reality is that many Lakewood residents can't afford to fund these types of campaigns without the help of outside support, especially when one side is made up of younger, less resourced members of the community like myself. I'm a strong believer in transparency and fairness in campaign finance, and I would love to be a part of creating a better system together. Let's be clear, these funding tactics that we're addressing here are realities on both sides of these issues. And I'd like to ensure that the changes in the process result in a fair and transparent process that reflects all views and positions, and not those that you may just agree with and support. I just want to add to that. I emailed this to all the council members earlier today and to Mayor Paul, but also wanted to add, I have not been super present. I'm a young father. I have my 6-year-old, my wife, and a very busy schedule. But I'm relatively newly located here in Lakewood over the last couple of years, and it's my intention to become very, very involved here. So I plan to see you guys quite regularly, and I apologize that this may be the first time for some of you guys, but I do follow things pretty closely, and I will be here pretty consistently from here on out.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mace, you didn't think I'd be able to tell. Tried to trick me with just the initials tonight. Come on down.
Sounds like my plan failed. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I have a couple of questions. And Mayor, I would like for Councilor Johnson to answer them. Where is the City of Lakewood regarding the grocery cart ordinance? At the end of last year, 2017, the city manager said that that would be on the agenda. I would like to know what month and what agenda that would be on. And then number 2 is, why am I seeing and pulling back more carts than what I was last year at the end of 2017? Somebody respond to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Young, come on down. Is he speaking on the Taylor? Do I have 2 Mr. Youngs? Oh, my goodness, I have 2 Mr. Youngs. But, Robert, you're first. I'm sorry.
Good evening.
Welcome.
It's Robert Young.
Yes.
Mayor Paul, Council. I'm here tonight to support the nomination of Councilwoman Gutwein for Mayor Pro Tem. I live in the same neighborhood as Dana. I've known her for many years. I know of her record as a leader in our neighborhood and would like to suggest that that leadership role she plays in our neighborhood would carry over. Thank you. How's that? Great. I hope I don't have to repeat all that. Okay. I want to give you some examples of what she's done in our neighborhood, which is the Southern Gables neighborhood, where we both live. First of all, I know she's been on the HOA board. Prior to her involvement in that organization, the board was rather ineffective, and she has had a leadership role. I think she's been an officer in that, which has changed the direction and the focus of the HOA, and it's now become a very active and very supportive organization in our neighborhood. Another role that I'm very familiar with is the establishment of our neighborhood sustainable program. I moved to Southern Gables a few years ago, and before I moved even, we were sending emails back and forth about beginning to start the sustainable neighborhood in Southern Gables. Dana was the leader of that, and it has now won many awards here in Lakewood. We're now a mentor for several other neighborhoods that are interested in becoming a sustainable neighborhood, and all of that is due to Dana's leadership and her enthusiasm in Lakewood and in the neighborhood and in what she does. Part of that is a neighborhood garden, which was her idea from the very beginning. Since she's been on the council, she's handed that off to others in our neighborhood, but that again was her idea and her role in getting it established. I know on a national level, she's been involved in a program called Moms for Clean Air. She's been the Colorado liaison for that organization, which has supported clean air for our kids through mothers, and that's a great way to get things done. And finally, I know she's been involved in something in our neighborhood called Neighborhood Night Out. I remember the first time we started that, it was about 24 people in a driveway. And it's evolved into, with her involvement in it, into the last couple of years, we've had 500 or 600 people at our local elementary school. We've had 20 to 25 exhibitors showing what they can provide to our neighborhood. So I want to close, and I wish I could answer any questions you have, but she has represented our neighborhood, and I know she could represent the city equally well, the council and the mayor in this role. So I just am here this evening to support her nomination or her, whatever it is, her recommendation, the mayor's recommendation that she be approved for that role. So I thank you for your time. And again, I wish I could answer any questions that you may have about this, but thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Carrie Tipper? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Tipper, and as some of you may know, I'm running for House District 28. But I come to you today as your constituent. I come to you as a frustrated Lakewood resident. And I'm frustrated because the nomination for Councilor Gutwein was not ratified. And first off, one of the frustrations I have is that you heard from your city attorney that your procedure is authorized by your charter. And yet I heard from some of you suddenly that you didn't believe the procedure was authorized by your charter. This is frustrating to me. And you can call me skeptical, but I suspect that if the nomination had been for someone else, perhaps for Councilor Roybal, the nomination would have been ratified, and that you would not have had a problem with the procedure, perhaps until after you had a new mayor pro tem. So this brings me to my second point. I do believe it's well within your authority to change the procedures, and perhaps it's a good idea, and I absolutely, leave that to you. But the timing bothers me, and I'm going to pick on my counselor in Ward 4. Councilor Franks, you've repeatedly stated that you've opposed this procedure, and to your credit, I saw in the January 2016 meeting that you raised opposition, but shortly thereafter, you ratified Councilor Johnson's nomination for Mayor Pro Tem. And then a year later, you did the exact same thing, ratifying Councilor Harrison's nomination. So I ask you, what has changed? And I posit to all of you, please just be straightforward, be forthcoming with what your position is. If you disagree with the mayor's nomination of Councilor Gutwein, then just say that and explain to me why. And I would say that when you're explaining why, please do better than generalizing about her as a young woman who perhaps hasn't had the time or the experience to develop the skills and judgment that you deem necessary for the position. And I would submit that as Mr. Young also discussed, she does have the skills and the judgment. He sort of stole my thunder on some of her community involvement, but also just point to some of the things that have impressed me about Councilor Gutwein. She has a degree in neuroscience and engineering. In a former life, she was a field engineer, in charge of a crew, in charge of explosive materials, radioactive materials, and she was in charge of their training and their well-being. And then she transitioned successfully to a different career, working with and consulting with businesses. And now she has her own small business, and she has a family with 2 children. And so she is exactly the type of leadership and person that we need in this position. And I would suggest that there's no fault with the mayor's nomination. And in fact, she's precisely the person that we could be proud of as mayor pro tem of this city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Frazier? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Haven't done public speaking.
Take your time. Just pull the microphone close, please.
Okay. So I'm here today because I was wondering the stance that the council may have on a Colorado Senate Bill 152, which denies local municipalities to create their own broadband networks. In the recent, in the 2017 voting, 19 different Colorado cities voted to opt out of this bill that prevents municipalities to create their own networks. One of the leading cities that are currently have their own municipal internet is Longmont, and they have been able to be very competitive with large internet service providers and create faster speeds to consumers and businesses. Personally, I know very many people at my own office that would be able to, or that would move to Longmont personally just to have those kind of speeds and access, and it would also help small business owners have their have the latest and greatest speeds and availability so that they can thrive in a growing online commerce. I also have looked into other cities that are investigating privately owned networks like Centennial, and they are planning on providing services through Ting. And these services can be brought down for internet prices. I know people that pay about $120 a month just for internet alone, while people in Longmont have signed up for services that are only $60 a year and provide some of the highest speeds in the country. If a municipal internet was brought to Lakewood, I believe that many organizations would be interested in moving to Lakewood and developing their business here. And that's pretty much my statement. Right. So thank you very much for your time, and it's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming out. Forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. David Jodis. Mr. Jodis, come on down. Oh, geez. Mr. Jodis, you are up, and on your way back afterwards, will you give the clerk your address for the record? Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. My name is David Jodis. I'm here tonight to express my caution on the ordinance that is encouraging any residential development over 40 units to go to City Council. And with complete transparency, I am a residential developer, and it's really refreshing to be here with no agenda. I am not active with any project in Lakewood. I have no pipeline in Lakewood. There is no pursuits that we're actively going after. But I've been fascinated watching Lakewood. I mean, it's hard not to read with everything that's going on in your great city. And my concern's not so much with the added input from the city and the neighborhood. And on the contrary, I think every great project that includes the neighbors' input, you get a better project. And if anything, I think the radius around certain projects should be extended to get more neighborhood input. My fear is the campaign contributions that could come into a city council race if you put that much power into city council's hands. With the process the way it is currently, and I should bifurcate zone by right versus rezonings, I completely agree if you're going through a rezone, you should go through city council, you're asking for something. But if you're zoned by right and you still have to go through city council to get your zoning by right, if it's over 40 units, I think there's no other way that you're not going to see significant campaign finances come into the next political realm, and you're going to have significant backing by the residential community. And that scares me a little bit. And I know that's weird coming from a residential developer, but I just wanted to come tonight and express my fear if that continues to move forward. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Frickle, come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. To introduce myself, for a bit of background, my name is Eva Frickle, and I have been a resident of Lakewood since 1999.
You pulled the microphone closer, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is that better? Yes. I say I've been a resident since 1999, which actually makes Lakewood the place I've lived longest in my life, since I left the village I grew up in at 17 to go to university. Since then, I've had the opportunity to live in Italy, Belgium, Spain, amongst other countries. Lakewood is where we chose to live. My husband and I bought our house here. We've chosen to raise our family here, and we've been very, very happy. I'm here to address the City Council's attitude to Mayor Paul's nomination of Ms. Goodwine as pro tem. I won't bother to reiterate everything. Thankfully, someone else has already outlined her wonderful achievements and also challenged the legal questions. So I'm going to take this opportunity to read the letter to the editor that was published in the Sentinel, because it very coherently addresses my same concerns. Let's see. Letter to the editor. I am writing to share my frustration concerning Lakewood City Council's failure to ratify Mayor Adam Paul's selection for the position of Mayor Pro Tem at the regular City Council meeting of December 4th. According to Council's Procedures Manual, and that was addressed, the Mayor nominates a council member for the office of Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council ratifies that choice. This is normal and established procedure. A recent email from former Council Member Weichman prior to December 4th's meeting framed this appointment as a battle between the establishment and the independents, when it should really have been a vote to choose the very best person to represent the city at public functions in the absence of the mayor. Mr. Wickman's constant attempts to sow dissent and disharmony are destructive to any action to move our city forward, and I am so tired of it. If he had any positive contribution to make, it would have appeared long ago. It is clear that Dana Goodwine, the mayor's nominee, is a person highly qualified, as outlined by Mr. Young, to fill the position of Mayor Pro Tem. She's intelligent and articulate and would have represented our city well for the next year. The mayor made a great choice in nominating her. Mr. Weichman's attempt to make this routine matter a divisive issue is too typical of his actions. Unfortunately, City Council stooped to his level, and a routine action became a political event. How disappointing that our City Council will have to face this kind of divisiveness for the coming term. This letter was written by Lorna Fox, but I fully agree with everything she says. I would also like to add that the patronizing and quite frankly sexist language used by the representative from Ward 3 was thoroughly insulting to me as a woman, and particularly to Miss Goodwine. Yes, she is a promising young woman, but she has already shown through the community actions she's been involved in, she's fulfilled that promise. She has more to give, there is no doubt about that, so yes, she has continued promise, but it was quite frankly insulting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brenda Bronson? Good evening.
We seem to be all speaking on the same subject. I'm Brenda Bronson. I'm in Ward 4, and I was disappointed with 5 members who voted no to ratify Mayor Paul's nomination of Councilor Dana Goodwine as Mayor Pro Tem last month. These councilors are Beta, Skilling, Abel, Roybal, and Franks. Dana Goodwine is extremely well qualified to represent our community as Mayor Pro Tem, as many people have already said before me. She received extensive community support. I am upset with the process that it happened by. As we all know, good governance means following adopted processes and being open, honest, and transparent. But these 5 counselors did not follow their own adopted processes, nor were they open, honest, or transparent. On the night of this vote, they changed the process, and they didn't tell us why. They pretended it was a process when it wasn't. For the past 2 years, Councilor Franks, Abels, they voted on 4 different council officers using the same process they didn't use last month. They brought up no issues in the process then, even if they were working on changing it. Why change it last month? But following the same process, they voted for Councilors Johnson and Royable for council offices. Then all of a sudden, last month, they say they don't like the rules, so they won't follow them. And that's why they voted against, that's what they said is why they voted against it. I'm in Ward 4, Ms. Franks, and apparently I wanted to raise a question to you specifically because I guess you said you didn't support her because you didn't like the process. Then, several minutes later, you voted yes for Councilor Abel's self-nomination to be the council president, and yet it's the same process. It's the same policies and procedures. You voted no for her, yes for him. They were based on the same policies. So apparently, you don't really object to the policy so much. You object to what suits you politically as the person being nominated, and you follow the processes if it suits you politically, and you don't follow it if it doesn't suit you politically. It's well known that 5 of you are politically aligned, and your stance happens to go with them, with a particular ideology and political alignment. And so, was it really about process or was it about politics? I am really disappointed, and we've had a mayor pro tem every year for 50 years, and all of a sudden we don't have one. And it's not even though for 50 years there's been differences of people on Lakewood City Council, why is it so different now? I request the council reconsider the mayor's appointment of Dana Gutwein as mayor pro tem, and moving forward, I hope we can count on greater transparency, honesty, and at least follow the rules.
Thank you. Our other David, and you saved me from having to pronounce your last name. So thank you. Welcome.
My name's David Cesney. If you
There you go.
see the spelling of my last name, you would understand why I thought I was next up. So Mayor Paul and members of City Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you here tonight. Having watched the December 11th City Council meeting online, I'm here tonight to express my disappointment and displeasure with the council's decision to reject the nomination of Councilor Gutwein as Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Lakewood. Just as previous commenters have mentioned, despite the claims of certain members of council, I was rather shocked at the obviously political nature of the vote itself, as well as the discussion that led up to it. While certain members of council may legitimately take issue with the nomination process, the timing of Councilor Abel's motion strongly suggested to me that such concerns were not the true reason for the rejection of this nomination. As previous people have mentioned, Councilor Abel, Councilor Franks, you've had 2 years on council to do something about this process, and yet it wasn't until Councilor Gutwein was nominated that you chose to do anything about it. To me, this was very disappointing. In addition, I personally found certain newly elected councilors' appraisals of Councilor Gutwein's perceived lack of experience to be extremely disrespectful to her, to Mayor Paul, and especially to the residents of Ward 5 who elected Councilor Gutwein to represent us on council. It's really nice to be told that our elected representative somehow lacks the necessary experience to serve in a leadership position. Councilor Gutwein has been representing us in Ward 5 very effectively for the last 2 years. I first met her when she was leader of the Southern Gables Sustainable Neighborhood Program. And since that time, I've found her to be a tireless advocate for all citizens of Lakewood. Councilor Gutwein is truly not beholden to any special interest unless you would consider the working families of Lakewood to be a special interest. Like me, she's a parent of young children with a sincere commitment to make Lakewood a safe and enjoyable place to live today. It's truly a shame that members of council chose to deny all the residents of Lakewood the services of an intelligent and dedicated public official to serve as the city's mayor pro tem. In the future, I hope that you all will demonstrate more respect for the working families of Ward 5 by treating our elected representative with the same professionalism and courtesy as I'm sure she's demonstrated to you in your time together on council. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Furman. Good evening. Welcome.
Thanks again. I'm actually here just to talk about a proposed study session regarding the 40-unit piece of the Strategic Growth Initiative.
It's
always impossible to tell if you're close enough, at least from this location. In any event, the reason I wanted to talk about that is because, honestly, I respect the efforts to address people's concerns with growth. I think that's critical and important. Obviously, people are concerned with it. But the 40-unit proposal part of the Strategic Growth Initiative is easily the most egregiously unfair and most detrimental part of the initiative. And the main reason it's unfair is because we have zoning for a reason. Our zoning is so that property owners know what their rights are. As soon as you create an arbitrary system by which their rights are decided later, you're now taking away people's rights, and you're creating an arbitrary system that is grossly unfair. Additionally, the detrimental piece of it is you're putting at risk a whole range of housing, from condos, market rates, affordable housing, senior housing, all because there are certain areas you don't want to develop to a density of higher than 40 units, which is totally acceptable, but I think it should be done through zoning for two reasons. One, it becomes a more permanent thing. People know what they have, and you can begin to address the changes. I know in Ward 4 it's a big concern. You can begin to address those changes that you see as a community you want to make, but in a permanent fashion that doesn't feel arbitrary and whimsical. And I understand, Councilman Skilling, I understand you want to get this stuff done quick, and I think that's great. But I think perhaps the way to do it is some of the other efforts you're making, which is to get to some of the zoning discussions more quickly. So that's the reason I was here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you. The other Mr. Young, Michael, come on down. Welcome.
I'm no relation to the other, although my father's name was Robert. And I am here in support of Dana for Mayor Pro Tem. I've been a resident in Lakewood since 1955. I went to Alameda High School with Mr. Beta. Dana was elected by my neighbors in Ward 5, and she was supported by the man we elected as mayor, which I think support her selection. I think she's done a good job. I think she should serve as Mayor Pro Tem. I especially appreciate her support for Jeffco Schools and for local nonprofits. A lot of people have expressed frustration here. It appears to me, not knowing everything that's gone on here, but it appears to me that recent dismissive comments about her qualifications are less about, dismissive comments about her experience and judgment, maybe less about her qualifications for Mayor Pro Tem, and more about attempts to wrest control, some degree of control from the people we've elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. All right. Anybody else wish to speak on public comment? Ms. Kentner? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Don't think I'll be too far away. I'm Catherine Kentner. I live at 9475 West Cedar Avenue in Lakewood, 80226. I'm here tonight because I understand there's misleading. It says to oh, okay. Sorry, it said stop, so I stopped.
Nope, you're good. In fact, you got extra time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Take two. I'm here tonight because I understand and heard some misleading and outright false information about Councilman Abel's involvement with Lakewood Neighborhood Partnerships. Information that was distributed to City Council by a political operative associated with the mayor and who collected and spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to buy 3 Lakewood City Council seats. Thankfully, the voters rejected these candidates. Councilor Abel was part of the Lakewood Neighborhood Partnerships when it was first formed in 2014. However, he resigned immediately upon his election to council in 2015. This is a fact that Charlie has publicly disclosed more than once during his role on council. During his time with L&P, Charlie donated many hours and spent his own money in our work helping neighbors and neighborhoods prior to becoming a city councilor. In fact, during Councilor Abel's time on the L&P board, L&P did not have outside revenue, nor did we even have a bank account. Councilor Abel has not given money nor any in-kind services to L&P since his departure from the group in 2015, nor has he donated to the Strategic Growth Initiative. There is no, as the accuser says, hypocrisy, because Councilor Abel, for over 25 years, has fought for a level playing field in Lakewood elections, which have largely been dominated by special interest money and the recently ousted establishment, many of whom support and donate to the accuser's fat campaign checkbook. Charlie funded almost all of his own campaign, and most all donations he did accept came from Lakewood residents and Lakewood businesses. If anyone is a hypocrite, it is the influence peddling author of this email and Facebook attack on Councilor Abel's character. We should all strive to be more like Councilor Abel, who consistently demonstrates the values of integrity, professionalism, and bringing us together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I'll now close public comment. Thank you all. Mr. Mace, shopping carts are calendared for March 5th. To the gentleman about SB 152, this council, I can't speak on behalf of, but I think we've heard a lot from the community about municipal broadband, and if that is something that is of great interest, please reach out to your elected officials, and that's something that we can have a conversation about. But we have started to hear, I think, a lot more, especially with the passage in Fort Collins about municipal broadband, and communities willing to take it on. So please stay active and get your group together and reach out to everybody. Councilor Franks, you want to address public comment?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. Well, first and foremost, I wanted to thank everybody that came out tonight and spoke on topics. The passion that folks have for Lakewood is so apparent, and that's what we're here for. We're here to hear everything. But I did want to take a few minutes to make sure folks had a little bit of context about some of the discussion that was held tonight. So to kind of take us back to that prior meeting, I wanted to walk people through kind of the 3 separate votes and then just talk through a few aspects of that. So Councilor Abel did have a motion that night to delay the selection of a mayor pro tem until after the council's policies and procedures manual was finalized. And he also amended that to include the fact that we would extend the 2 current council officers beyond their current end date. That way there would at least be that continuity. For some folks who have said that maybe this came out of the blue, I just want to be very clear that the very first council meeting I ever attended, I brought with me a copy of the council's policies and procedures manual because when I joined council, didn't even know this document existed. It was nowhere on the website. It was nowhere to be found. And what I brought to that very first meeting was the fact that I felt the process was broken, That council's policies and procedures manual, I'm not sure how it made through the prior legal review, but it was full of editorialized comment, things like, if you don't hear from your constituents, assume you're doing a great job. All kinds of things that made me very uncomfortable, including when I started marrying up the language inside the policies and procedures and trying to trace that back to the charter. And at that time, I ran on a campaign of not only representative government, but also dismantling any types of coalescing of power that conflicted with the charter. So for those who maybe thought that maybe it was an out of the blue thing, that was the very first meeting I ever attended as a newly elected councilor. And so I did vote for that motion. That council's policies and procedures manual revision languished for a year and a half before we finally got a lot of traction with that. So that's part of the issue, and we were near the completion when we just didn't have enough runway to finish that. So I just wanted to lay a little bit of foundation for that particular motion and why I supported that. Up next came the vote actually for the mayor pro tem. And I have long been opposed to that process. I don't like to ever be in a position where there's a selection and a ratification, especially when it conflicts with the charter. And so I did ask for the city staff to provide me with the prior council's policies and procedures so we could see if this was a long-term thing or whether it was relatively new. And many of those in the audience and watching at home that know me know that I have been fighting kind of against maybe city power for some time when I fought for open space along with 8,000 citizens who signed a petition. So when the mayor pro tem position came open and it was time to ratify that, I did vote no. In the prior elections where there was no one else running, and frankly, because I was in a minority position, I did vote for the folks. Didn't have anything against those particular folks. Don't have anything against Councilor Gutwein. So that vote was a no. And then came the third vote for the council president. Keeping in mind we had term limited folks in positions, and we also then had just had a no vote for a mayor pro tem. I did vote for the council president position that Charlie Abel was running for. Now keep in mind that was running for, no one was running against him, but that wasn't a nomination. I have long been an advocate of removing the council president from the manual, and in fact the version we're working on has the council president removed. So that vote was really a stopgap to just tide us over until we got to the point where we would get the policies and procedures done, we'd get a pro tem, and then we'd have that background. So I wanted to I know that's a long way from A to Z, but it at least gives you some context there. I think the other thing is that it's important to note is that I have looked for every opportunity to look for wherever power has been tried to be centralized and to look to decentralize that. That's not for my benefit, that's for the benefit of the whole council. That's the benefit for future councils. I think the prior council, when they adopted the council's policies and procedures, they tried to hamstring future councils by telling them that there was a process they had to follow, when I think each council should decide what process works best for them. The other thing I just want to point out is that it's just important that I don't think it's effective when folks lobby one another in support or against. I think each piece of legislation should fly or not fly on its own merits. That's how I vote. I don't promise somebody, if you give me this, I'll give you that. Each piece of legislation that comes for me, whether you like my vote or not, is voted on as an individual piece of legislation. So thanks. I appreciate all the time for the lengthy comments there. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Councilor Abel.
I just want to point out that I didn't vote both ways on the process. I honor the process that we're putting in place. It is charter friendly and charter compliant. And I would remind folks that I voted against myself because I couldn't vote both ways on the same process. So I still believe that the process doesn't leave council a choice, and the current process It has not been in place for the 35 years folks seem to think it has been. And it is, I will anticipate the approval of the new policies and procedures manual, and then another look at who becomes our mayor pro tem. And I will also say that because there are two worthy candidates for pro tem, Ms. Gutwein and Mr. Roybal, that I'm removing my name from the president's list, and hope that one of those two people will take that job when they are after the pro tem vote is posted. Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm really humbled by all of you coming out and speaking tonight. It's actually weird how uncomfortable it is for me to listen to that, but I just really want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your night to being here. And I hadn't asked for that on the evening of the vote because many of you, you're working, you have kids, or other things to do on a Monday night. So I just really want to thank you for being here tonight. And also to the many people who sent an email on my behalf in the first part of the process. So thank you, means the world to me. And then also I just want to address my colleagues as well. So I'd like to ask for an increased level of honesty and transparency during the process moving forward. As I mentioned, the evening of the vote, I reached out to every member of council and met with or spoke with on the phone with everyone except for Councilor Johnson, who was out of town. So thank you for that time, first of all, and thank you to those of you who, voiced your support. And some people mentioned that they were unsure of how they would vote, and that's okay, and I understand that. The reasons that they mentioned were my alignment with the mayor, political differences, and on the one hand, I understand that because it's challenging and we have different opinions. But on the other hand, and I also didn't think that I would escape the election and openly supporting some of my colleagues' opponents without any backlash. But on the other hand, I don't understand. That's not the leadership that has been exhibited to me in Lakewood, and it's not the leadership that Mayor Paul exhibited after the mayor election. When he, after going head-to-head with one of his colleagues for mayor, nominated Councilor Johnson to be mayor pro tem, and we unanimously decided to support her. And I had no qualms in doing that because even though we differ in our political opinions, I know that Councilor Johnson, just as an example, was elected by the people of Lakewood. And the people of Lakewood have different opinions on the issues. And I respect that stance. And so I was proud to be one of the members to unanimously support her and all of the other council officers that we have nominated and ratified using the same policies and procedures over the last 2 years, and which, by the way, those have been in effect for at least the last 10. The number of people who told me that they were not going to vote on a mayor pro tem at all because they didn't support the rules that we had in effect was zero. No one told me that they were going to not vote at all or vote no because they didn't like the current rules. To me, it's not honest, it's not transparent, it's not good governance, and I'd like to ask my colleagues moving forward that if we're going to have discussions about policy, that we can be honest even if we disagree. It gives us a chance to reach compromise, to understand each other's positions, and to ultimately get to solutions. I'd also like to just briefly address Councilor Bita's statement that I'm a young woman without the experience or leadership ability, and I think several people mentioned this, but I feel that is disrespectful, not just to me, but to the people who elected me and the people that I represent in Lakewood. They put their faith in me to stand up for them and be their voice at this table. And it is disrespectful to discount my voice because of my age or my what you consider my experience. So I was going to take a moment of personal privilege to highlight my background. I'll be very brief because some of you already did this, so I appreciate that. But you know, I have a double major that I earned in 4 years from Vanderbilt University. I earned a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Science and also in Neuroscience, while I was also working part-time at the biology lab. During the summer, I was a waitress right here in Lakewood. And after that, I got my first job as a field engineer for Schlumberger, where I was authorized to use explosives and nuclear sources. I was the manager of a small team. I spent many nights sleeping in the pickup truck in oil fields. It was a difficult job, to say the least. And so after that, when I decided I wanted to start a family, moved to Colorado, where the rest of my family lives. It was a down economy, and I taught myself how to do web design and online marketing, and worked for Intuit as a small business consultant. When we did get pregnant and have kids, I started my own business to help make ends meet from home. And then, you know, the rest is history. I started working in my community because my background in science is what gives me the belief that we can be more efficient, we can live more sustainably, and it's the fact that I'm a mother that makes me believe we have to. And so that's why I'm here. And I talk about being a mom the most because it is, to me, the most important job that I have, but that is not the extent of my experience. Finally, I just want to, and just on a side note, in my experience, it's more effective as leader to challenge one another's ideas and not make personal attacks, for whatever that is worth. I'd like to also just retract the statement that I said about being willing to sit through hour-and-a-half-long meetings and getting yelled at. I did do that. I will not do that again. With my colleagues, I'm happy to sit down with anyone who is willing to have a respectful and professional conversation. And in conclusion, I'd just like to ask all of us, you know, we have different opinions. This is frankly one of the smallest and most inconsequential decisions that we're going to make this year. And we face much bigger challenges in our community, like growth issues. So moving forward, let's have the tough conversations and let's be honest with each other. And I just would like to see an increased transparency, honesty, and respect as we move forward. I think Lakewood deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just close with saying thank you to everybody that came out tonight on all the issues. It is unfortunate what took place. I think that's the first time in Lakewood's history we don't have a mayor pro tem. Contrary to what you may have heard, it is compliant with our charter. It's the way the charter reads, or as chosen by city council. That didn't happen. That's unfortunate. We don't have a mayor pro tem. It's interesting when you go out to other communities and they see some of that dysfunction, and it's kind of shocking to them. But you know what? Our community is bigger than this. We will prevail. We'll go forward. Mayor pro tem or no mayor pro tem, I'll just be right here in this seat every Monday night. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to a fun 2018 and great public comment tonight. So will the clerk please read the consent agenda into the record?
The consent agenda consists of items 7 through 9 inclusive. Item 7, Resolution 2018-1, designating the public place for posting notices of public meetings during 2018 pursuant to CRS 24-6-402. Item 8, Ordinance O 2018-1, vacating a portion of Hoyt Street right-of-way between 14th Avenue and the RTTW line at West 13th Avenue, and approving the minutes of the City Council meeting of November 27th, 2017.
Great, thank you. And the consent agenda, the use of it has been made to expedite council action. It contains, as you heard, both resolutions and first reading ordinances. Resolutions are items of a routine nature. Members of the public will have an opportunity and moment to comment on any of the proposed resolutions. First reading ordinance appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. No public comments will be heard this evening on first reading ordinances. The public will have the opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinance during the scheduled public hearing on the date set forth tonight by the council. Any council member may request an item on the consent agenda be removed for separate discussion and action under general business. I don't see anybody wishing to do that. So now I'll open the public hearing on the consent agenda. Nobody has signed up to speak. If you wish to speak on resolution 2018-1, Mr. Mace, come on down. Welcome back.
That's when you guys are going to hear loud and clear. I am not pleased with the way this council's handled RTD, period. I am not pleased with the way they've handled the WM. I'm also really displeased because none of the agents are around like weather station anymore. What happened? I want to know, and I want to know ASAP. That's not RTD's responsibility. It's both. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mace. And again, that the RTD issue is an ordinance, so that's just first reading tonight, and we'll be back for second reading if you want to continue the conversation. Anybody else on the proposed resolution? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and ask for a motion.
Mayor Paul, I move for approval of the council minutes. Order all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post with public hearing set for the date included in the ordinance, and for adoption of resolutions, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And the consent agenda passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Will the clerk please read item 10 into the record?
Item 10, Ordinance 2017-17, authorizing the purchase of real property from the Vernon F. Taylor Jr. Revocable Trust for open space, park, trail, and municipal purposes, including acceptance of a deed from the seller, conveyance of a deed to Jefferson County for purpose of imposing an open space reverter clause, acceptance of a deed from Jefferson County, and approving a supplemental appropriation for the 2018 fiscal year from the Capital Improvement Fund and the Open Space Fund.
Fantastic. Thank you. This is a big deal. I see our city manager. She is all grins, and she should be. So we have a presentation, and I'm going to ask Ms. Newland to come on down. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a big night for us. Very excited. We've been working on this for a while. Let's see if we can get the slides up. So we are asking for your approval tonight of this ordinance in regard to the acquisition of the Taylor property. And the depiction that you see here shows you the entire Taylor Estate property, which is 122 acres. It's adjacent to Wadsworth Boulevard and our portion of it lines up at Morrison Road. You can see the portion that we are hoping to acquire outlined in red. It's just a little bit shy of 58 acres. Citizens of Lakewood would be familiar with this property if they ever, and most people do, go north-south on Wadsworth between Yale and Morrison Road, and you have an opportunity to view this beautiful open space to the east along that route. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context for where the property is. You can see that it's down in the, close to the southeast corner of the city of Lakewood and where it is in relationship to our other park properties. It's about probably a 10-minute walk down to the Greenbelt, to the Bear Creek Greenbelt, to the south and west. So it's very well located for people to get in and out of the property eventually. I just wanted to show you a couple of photographs. This one shows you one of the beautiful views and the beautiful topography. We also do know that there's quite a lot of wildlife on this space. So it's a beautiful, peaceful, serene area that we hope to preserve well into the future. What we hope to do is to keep this space as passive recreational open space. The plan right now would be to eventually, of course, put a parking area in, and then put in a restroom facility, a couple of shade shelters, and some benches in places where you can get really good views. So the funding that we are proposing to use is from the Capital Improvement Fund, city funds, 1.2, from the Open Space Fund, 2 million. And then we will be going to Great Outdoors Colorado asking for 2.1, and we've gone to Jefferson County Open Space for 1.6. And here's another beautiful shot, looking more to the west, the southwest. As you're aware, when we did our Imagine Lakewood plan, we got a lot of input from folks about how important it is that we try to add to our inventory of park and open space, and this aligns beautifully with that, this almost 60 acres of open space. So we're absolutely thrilled. Our timeline is to begin a site planning process in the beginning of 2019. Of course, funding will play into that as well, but that's our hope at this point in time. So with that, we're very excited, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing.
Okay.
And we can come back to questions.
Great.
Thank you. All right. So public hearing, I'm going to now open the public hearing. Again, same rules, 3 minutes, 2.5 green, and then 30 seconds yellow after that red. And I do have a request for some extra time from a homeowner's representative representing many different groups. So come on down, Ms. Brewer, and we'll get you going. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy New Year to all of you.
You too.
Mayor Paul and all you council people. Thank you from so many people to have this property doing this. I'm representing a group of people who live in that vicinity, and needless to say, everything that's happening at Mr. Taylor's property, the animals and whatever else, yes, we've seen all of that through. So we are more than appreciative of this happening with all the growth everywhere. Now, we do have a couple questions, though, maybe just to take into consideration. We just heard now the timeline of 2019. I see Mr. Taylor's family right there. So wondering now, with all of the due diligence, all of the appraisals and such, if we're talking in a 2019 timeline, when will you guys expect to have all of that, the surveying, everything resolved? Just wondering, these are way out there questions, but they were at a meeting, and to bring it to the table to say, what are the appraisals? Are they working well? Looking at what might be in that contract, is there a possibility if Mr. Taylor's family at one point decides, gee, there's some other parcels we'll be able to work with, would you have first right of refusal to purchase this property from City of Lakewood? Would you have something with the water rights on this property? Would that be something that might be considered? Because it certainly is a pristine property. My children know it too, and I'm speaking for a lot of people. We're appreciative of this. So, question though, in the ordinance it indicates for the purpose of preserving the property as open space, park, and other municipal uses. What are those other municipal uses? That's a little frightening because of all of the growth sometimes that happens. You just don't know where that goes to. So it's something that is of concern to us. Also regarding those, those water rights, is it a possibility to put it in the contract? I don't know how that all shakes out, but that was brought up also at one of the meetings. We realize this is a really early stages of development, and you have indicated, or it's been indicated, that Wadsworth and Morrison will be its entrance, future entrance to happen Wadsworth and Morrison Road. Is there any thought of anything on Vassar Avenue to have that? Because there is that lot that goes through to that property. Will that be involved in this at all? And also regarding that, talking about traffic lights, how will it affect the Wadsworth Morrison? Will that be a four-way situation, or what are you thinking? The people from Green Gables, will they then need to leave their Green Gables area and exit out somewhere north on Wadsworth or somewhere on Jewel to then flip around and come around? Just everybody was sitting around a table and talking and thinking, and so that's what we're presenting. Now in the northwest corner of Mr. Taylor's property it sits right up against the southernmost end of Green Gables property. There's a section in there that is not designated right now. It was rumored, and I'm saying rumored, as maybe the developer purchasing part of a triangular section in there for an entrance into the southern part of Green Gables. Just wondering how that shakes out. So I think that's it. Where there's nothing new, you guys have heard plenty of times about the traffic situation, so you know all of that. But again, thank you so much for what a fabulous addition this is going to be for the city of Lakewood. We're thankful to all of you for all your work, because it takes something to make this happen. Wouldn't it be wonderful, though, if the remainder of the Taylor property could be designated as open space one time? Again, thank you all. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Seitz? Okay. All right. Mr. Olson? All right. We have more time, but I think the Tornadoes will like to speak. Francesca, David, you signed up. Or I'm sorry, Dave, you're not speaking. You're yielding your time. All right. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. My name is Francesca Tornado. I'm a Lakewood native, and I just wanted to come up and voice my support for the acquisition of the 59 acres as parks and open space. So I'm just thrilled to hear that the city is investing resources to preserve this parcel as open space for current and future generations to enjoy. So I just wanted to voice my support and say thank you. I know as a fellow civil servant, all of the time and effort it takes to accomplish things like this. So thank you to city staff and the city manager, the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cohn. There he is. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just want to very briefly, as a longtime advocate of open space, to add my applause to everything that's been done to date on this. And I do want to extend my thanks also to the trustees of the Vernon Taylor Trust, and to with hope that they will act positively on this, the Jeffco Open Space and the GOCO, and I wish every success there. This is a part of the city that can use the preservation of open space where it's very quickly vanishing. So I think all the other comments and areas have been met. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And before we get into questions, I'll ask for a motion.
I move for the adoption of Ordinance O 2017-17 on second and final reading.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. I'm going to start with Ms. Hodson. You heard a couple of questions that hopefully that we could address, and that would be the expectations for the future, right of first refusal, water, what that note of municipal purposes is, and I think that we have some protections with GOCO and open space dollars, and then the Vassar Avenue.
Thank you. We will, how about if we tag team this a little bit, Kit? I'll start with, there's no intent to have access off of Vassar Avenue. That is a small lot, the size of a regular residential lot that has been owned by the Taylor Estate for many years, and that was an access to them for big equipment. And actually, Kit, can you point to it? You can see that. Our intention is not to make that a major access whatsoever. It would be more of an ancillary type access. So that one's real clear. I'll ask Kit to speak a little bit about the language of municipal uses, but remind you also that this would be deeded to us as open space. And so there's a protection there. When there's a deed to the city as identified as open space, it will take a vote of the people to make it anything different. Also, there's a restriction or a requirement, I would say, when we have funding by any of our partners. So Great Outdoors Colorado, which are lottery proceeds, we call those GOCO dollars, those also have restrictions. And also you can't sell or use the property for anything else once you utilize GOCO dollars, and the same for Jefferson County open space dollars. So this property, if this passes, will be protected with many layers, and it will be open space, parks and open space for the very long future, unless there's, for some reason, an election and the people decide to make that something else. Kit, would you like to answer the others?
The reason we put in municipal purposes because CDOT has plans to widen Wadsworth in the next couple of years. And we need to make sure that we have enough right-of-way there along Wadsworth. So we left that in. Then up at the Morrison, in the Morrison area here, we need a little bit of area too for this widening, because there needs to be a sidewalk put in here as well. So it's just a small amount. Those parcels will be separated so that they're not part of the open space transfer. So the deed gets transferred to open space, and that's written in the ordinance. It gets transferred to them, and then they put on this reverter, and then the deed gets transferred back to the city so that it is protected both by our city charter but also by the open space reverter. So that the piece that's going to be for municipal purposes will be small and will be just kind of along the edge there of Wadsworth.
And I can add then, there will be a fourth on the intersection of Wadsworth and Morrison. That will be the access point to this property. And there right now is a three-way signal, and there will be a fourth added to that. So it'll be a four-way signal.
Okay, there were the expectations for the future, so we look to plan in 19, and the price is held today as far as the appraised value and all of that.
Correct. We're working on a purchase and sale agreement now that will include items such as water. There's some other little areas that we need to have some agreements specific to. So we're working on that now, and we hope to have that finished in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. And then the site plan, we do think we can probably work on the site plan in 2019. And then we'll be working on trying to get some funding after that to do the development. The due diligence that was referred to earlier is being done now. So all of the due diligence will be completed very shortly, and then we'll be comfortable to move forward with a purchase and sale agreement.
All right, I want to go into council questions, not comments at this time, but questions. Councilor Franks. She's good? Oh, it's a comment? Okay. Will you light it back up then? Thank you. Councilor Harrison.
I think I was going to do a comment as well.
Okay.
So I'll come
We'll
back.
stay. Councilor Beda, question?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
due diligence, is that the appraisal process? Is that part of your due diligence?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have an appraisal?
We did. We had an appraisal completed in June.
Oh, it's already done?
Yes.
Okay, so I noticed that the price is still flexible. Why?
Oh, the reason for that was just because we hadn't completed the assessment of exactly what the property boundary was going to be. So we left it plus or minus, but we're almost positive now that we're just short of 58 acres.
Okay, so we still don't have a final price.
We will, when we have the purchase and sale agreement finished in the next couple of weeks, we'll be absolutely sure. But the appraisal was $7 million, and we have a per square foot cost. So that will just translate based on the acreage.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Blink your light. All right. Counselor Skilling.
Will we, excuse me, will we see the purchase and sale agreement again in front of council, or no, we won't see that?
No, that it's not intended to come back to council.
Thank you.
Anybody else with questions? All right, we'll now go into comments. Counselor Franks.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. First, wanted to acknowledge the Taylor family. This is an absolutely amazing piece of property. I'm a farm girl, grew up out in the rural area, and I can just imagine your family experiences there must have been lovely. So we are so thankful to be getting this property. As I campaigned, what was so visceral to people was how much they loved their open space. And that's how I came to office, was fighting to save open space. It's a space for the eyes to rest, the legs to stretch, and for our animals to roam. So I couldn't be any more grateful to be getting this property, and I will certainly be a yes vote for this. I am also very happy to hear about all the layers of protection that this property gets based on the GOCO dollars and deeding and all of that. I want to let citizens know that not every piece of parkland that we have in the city is as protected as that. So that's something that I want to work on in 2018, is to make sure that every piece of parkland, however it came to be at the city, whether it was a designation of a school site that later was never utilized, but want to make sure that we bring all those protections. That way it then is put back in the voters' hands for every piece of property. If they later change their mind and they want to see something developed, then it goes before a vote of the people. So I'm very grateful to know this pristine piece is not going to be disrupted, but we've got other parkland that we certainly want to bring that same level of protection to, because folks come to live in Lakewood for the vast amounts of open space that we have. And some of our open space currently is leased open space, and so it's not all forever. So we want to protect what we can, because not every piece is a forever piece. If it's like with Bear Creek Lake Park, that's all leased land. So at some point there could be a different decision with that. So very grateful for this piece, very excited. Thanks to staff for all your hard work. I know these types of things don't come together easily, and so much appreciate everybody's efforts, and so glad to be adding this to Lakewood open space.
Thank you. Counselor Abel.
I'll echo what Counselor Frank said to the family. It is a wonderful piece of property, and a lot of other things could have been done with it. We could have seen concrete and steel across this entire 58 acres, and we appreciate that you decided instead that the city should have it. And while I appreciate folks thanking council and the mayor for this acquisition, the star of the project is our city manager, Ms. Hodson, who for years has been diligently pursuing any opportunity she could to leverage this property. We can't say enough about her diligence in this area, so thank you very much, Ms. Hodson. Perhaps that's something we might keep in mind when a name comes up. Taylor Hodson Park. How does that sound?
Well, ironically, we have a Hodson Park in the inventory, which has nothing to do with her, but she still gets embarrassed about it.
Thank you, and thank y'all.
Counselor Johnson.
I just want to personally thank the Taylor family, and I appreciate your grace in doing this. on a personal level, I know it must be somewhat bittersweet. Thank you. Many people are going to benefit for many years because of your kindness and generosity. Thank you.
Councilor Bita?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also reiterate all the comments that have been made to the Taylor family. Thank you for your working with the city. I have described this property as one of the crown jewels of Lakewood, and I believe that's exactly what it is. I think when people get an opportunity to experience it and see what's there, they're going to be absolutely amazed. And I think that this is one of those decisions that were made and the efforts that were made by our city manager that will, in years to come, people will look back and go, that was one of the smartest things they ever did. And so thank you for working with our city.
Thank you. Councilor Roybal?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, to the Taylor family, thank you so much. We appreciate this. I've taken a short tour a few years ago, and I stood at the front of the entrance of the house, and I just happened to take a look to, actually to the east, and I happened to see Denver all the way across. And it's a beautiful place. It's so serene, so quiet. You can hear the birds chirp, but yet you can see in that particular area. It's so beautiful that when you leave that area, you get back into the city, and you're like, where did this come from? And it's a real jewel, and you know, it's an honor, and thank you for allowing us to acquire this property. Thank you.
Councilor Harrison?
Thank you very much. I have a good friend who is very much into horses, and she would tell you the thing that makes her the most excited about this piece of property is she can envision sitting on her horse, or better yet, galloping her horse across that property, waving her hat and enjoying the day in Lakewood. So I just wanted to tell you, thank you so much. This was very generous, and we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Councilor Gutwein?
Thank you. Well, we just can't thank you enough on behalf of the citizens, but I think you really do deserve to hear that, because we're going to continue to hear that, and it's really thanks to you that we're going to get to preserve this land for generations to come, and it's just such an incredibly meaningful gift to the future of Lakewood. So we really just can't thank you enough for this opportunity and to preserve this land. The time that I did get to go up there, and you take a look at the when you come through the trees, and you can see the mountains and you can see the city. It's just absolutely breathtaking, and yeah. So I just thank you very much on behalf of all of Lakewood. So thanks.
Councilor Vincent?
I would like to thank you also, because I didn't not want to say thank you and didn't want you to think I wasn't thanking you. So thank you very much. It's so nice to have something that everybody's thrilled and happy about. Thank you.
All right. Well, I can speak for those who may not have been able to say thank you. Thank you. But this is a big, big deal, and it's with great gratitude that I'm able to really thank you on behalf of our whole community. I've had the opportunity to go to the property and to see the house, and unfortunately probably a lot of folks in Lakewood haven't, and it is incredible, so rich with history. Mr. Taylor, the stories that you have riding horses to Colorado Academy and how you've seen and your family's seen it change so much. This is really cool, and it's something that our community is going to remember for years to come. We celebrate our 50th anniversary next year, and this is going to help jumpstart another 50 years of great preservation as we move forward and look to continue to expand our inventory. And there's been many times, I think, where you've wanted to walk away or could have walked away, and you haven't. So thank you for hanging in. And to Kathy and your whole staff, I mean, You really put this together. You're a Parks and Recs girl. It's your background. You know it. And you knew that this was something that was going to be meaningful and important to our community for generations to come. You two hung in, and I imagine it wasn't always easy. No? And I think that you even got to meet Mr. Taylor's father as well, which I know was a really cool experience for you. So with that, it's a great night to celebrate. We look forward to a continued partnership, and I think we'll be eternally grateful to you and your family, and we will celebrate your legacy for what you've done for the city of Lakewood. So with that, well, I was going to go ahead and take the vote and then invite him to come on up. All right. So we already have people voting. And it's good. So hold on. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. All right. And that passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Want to speak? So before I call Mr. Taylor up, Mr. Abel wanted to speak?
I do. I wanted to give y'all, all of you, thank you for giving us all something we can together agree on. Thank you very much. That's the first unanimous vote we've had in a while.
All right, and without further ado, we have Mr. and Mrs. Taylor here with us this evening, so please come on down.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever been publicly thanked so much in my life. I'm delighted my wife is here to hear all this. Made my evening and certainly made my day. I want to thank you, Mayor and the City Council. This is a big step for Lakewood. It's a big step for us. I grew up on this property. It's been in our family for 67 years. There's, from my point of view, a huge emotional attachment to this property. I'm sole trustee, and my father's instructions are very clear that he wanted a light footprint, didn't want it intensively developed. I can't think of a better way to not have it developed than to do it as an open space. And we did have, as been pointed out tonight, we did have other avenues open to us, and some of them quite seductive. And we stayed the course, and I'm very glad we did. I love Lakewood. This is where I grew up. I spent much of my life here, and it's in good hands. And I also want to say, to acknowledge from my point of view, and we've had, these discussions have been going on well over a year, intensively over a year, but they even started before that. We were considering this. And I want to thank Ross Williams. I want to thank Kit Newland, and particularly Kathy Hodgson. I've been in a lot of negotiations in my life at many different levels, and you have a very professional staff. These negotiations or discussions, more discussions than negotiations, were transparent, were collaborative, and incredibly professional. You've got a great team working for you, which I think you know and you've stated tonight. I want to leave you with one last thought. We all have friends that live in South Denver and some fancy houses in South Denver, Cherry Hills. You know the area, you know the people. And almost invariably when I run into some of them, they say, well, when it gets to bragging rights, they always tell me they have the best mountain views in Denver. And you now, when you run into these people, you can look them in the eye and can say, no, you don't. The residents of Lakewood do. Thank you.
Trying not to say thank you again. All right. That was fantastic. Very cool. Very cool. So So now we will move into general business where we have a few different topics to discuss. And let me get to that on my copy here. So we have a variety of council requests, and before we go into that, I'll turn it over to each council member who has made their requests. I want to talk about a couple things. Keep in mind we have our retreat coming up on February 17th, where we'll be looking at our goals for the next year. And we also currently on our docket have a few different things, and I'm going to share with you what we have right now that we still need to have some sort of resolution or council action on. Energy efficiency, you saw that in the budget. Shopping carts we'll see on March 5th. Building code update, the housing study, noise issues, development dialogue, the union corridor plan, the sign code, the nuisance ordinance, Airbnb or vacation rentals, facade biz program, Alameda corridor street improvements, term limits, LHS parking, trolley policies and procedures. We also have scheduled fee in lieu on February 5th. Again, the carts on March 5th. And that is where we are at. So with that, I will turn it over. Our first request is from Councilor Skilling on fee in lieu.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to keep this momentum of open space going and beautiful parkland, this is one of the requests that we made. I think you all had the October study session that we discussed this. I think it was agreed that this was, at least the money part, was significantly antiquated. And so we know that needs to be updated. I do note that we have the February 5th study session on this. So I guess at this point, that was the goal, was to get some movement on it. I've also submitted a draft ordinance. So hopefully we're looking at that as we speak. The ordinance wasn't anything significantly changed other than just making that $700 per unit up to fair market value, and then eliminating any opt-out for anything that's over 15 acres. So what I was looking for in a lot of these different requests was just some kind of a timeline in which we can actually get some first reading on schedule. And I know we just heard a long list. I think this is a priority, as I do with all of my suggestions. So I would be looking for as soon as possible.
Well said.
So February 5th, I guess I just look for some guidance of how quickly that study session, we've already done this. This is not a complicated issue as far as the writing part of it. So maybe shortly thereafter, the next meeting or two, we could get the first reading?
Because the fee in lieu conversation is actually a land use issue, it'll go to the Planning Commission for their recommendation and then an approval by City Council.
So if we have the study session on February 5th and give direction for a final ordinance, that could then be within a couple weeks to Planning Commission.
Certainly.
And
certainly can.
then that would have to do our posting, so we'd have first reading, second reading.
So it sounds like about 30 days from February 5th, so we'd be middle of March. Do we have a meeting?
What I'll do is, after this meeting, talk to our planning director and schedule the planning commission meeting. And then we'll post the city council meeting and do first and second readings. So I don't have an exact date, but I can make that available once we have that conversation.
Perfect, but it's not outrageous for me to say middle of March is doable.
What's that, 4 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it depends
somewhere in
on
there.
our procedure with getting it in, but it seems doable. Let's see, we do have we have holidays.
I work holidays.
So do I. However, we may be in the dark here.
Yeah, so what we'll do is go back
Yeah,
and
we'll be
get
in the
a
dark.
date, and I'll bring that back and we'll post it and make sure people have that. It's important for us to post in advance so that we have as much citizen input as possible. So we'll make sure that happens as quickly as we can as well.
Thank you very much.
Hear that.
So there's two questions on this, Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to see if we can get a written timeline to council on all these issues of when their projection date is going to be. That would really help us out a lot.
Yeah, you bet. So part of the retreat is for us to prioritize and build a dashboard, which will then have all of our priorities, and then we'll be able to weigh that against, it'll be our work plan. And when new requests come into play, we'll be able to weigh that, and that'll have the timeline with updates. So that's something that we're looking to get introduced next month going forward. I think that's going to help us with our business quite a bit. Okay. Councilor Gutwein?
Just want to say I'm really looking forward to that February 5th study session about this. This is evaluating our developer fees, including the park fee, is something that I prioritized during the 2016 retreat as well. And it's been, takes a process and having the discussions and part of the development dialogue to get here. So I'm anxious to hear about all of the different options that we talked about at the last study session on October 5th, whether or not this exact language will be the best way to maximize our dollars for park space and open space. I guess we'll find out, but looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councilor Skilling, you're up again. A request for study session regarding possible ordinance requiring any residential development of 40 or more units.
So this one, again, I'll have to defer to Ms. Hodson on that, on when the study session, when we can have a study session on this.
Go ahead.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but the first level of this conversation is, do you all want to have that study session? So you're all going to vote on whether you want to have a study session talking about a limitation of 40 units for anything over 40 units coming to city council. So once you direct us to bring that to council, if you direct us, we'll come back to council with a study session and we'll have a date.
So that was my misunderstanding. I didn't know that exactly how this process works, so I'll give some background on it. This is a proposal that I heard, obviously, through this last campaign. As the city has grown and people have seen projects that are popping up all over town, a lot of folks have been dismayed that either they didn't know it was happening, or that they didn't appreciate the standards that were used, the architectural standards or what have you. In any event, that's almost irrelevant, because the analysis should be, what things can we do to improve citizen input and incentivize developers to collaborate with the community. And I think that this conversation will do that, because it will, if developers know that they have to come before the citizens of Lakewood, they're going to give us the best product that they have. That's what I believe. And also that I think a lot of the people I talk to believe that, and that we will then also, we'll have public comment. We've got a lot of big projects in this town that a lot of people never commented on, didn't know were happening, which a lot of that, me included, that was my fault for being apathetic. And I think this will be just one more thing that we can do as a city to make sure the projects are known to the public and the best that we can provide. So I think that it's something that we should look at. I know that staff was very helpful in providing us. They did great. They were very responsive in working with me to get an idea of what kind of projects we're even talking about over the past 5 years. And believe it or not, it's actually not that many projects that we're talking about. So when people say, oh, well, this is going to be really bureaucratic, or we're going to get bogged down, or how can you do that? You're only talking about 2, 3, 4 projects a year. And so, I think that's, a good thing about Lakewood, that we're not being so overrun. We can actually take some time, have public hearings on some of these projects. So,
So there's a lot of comments on this. Councilor Vincent?
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's a hot topic, but what I'd like to offer for consideration is that we wait until the Planning Commission comes back, because I think what you're addressing, I'm hoping that they will address, because it is things like design guidelines, heights of buildings, building material, notification to folks around, enlarging that area. So I'd kind of like to give them a chance to come back with some things for us to react to, and then perhaps move on if we need to. Because with that, just that 40 limit, there's a lot of other stuff that kind of goes in with it, which you alluded to. So I'd just like to wait on it a little bit, that's all.
Councilor Abel?
Our city councils in the past had more input on major development in the city, and this would restore decisions to elected officials. I would like to see it be 20 or more units, and I don't want another 6 or 8 month process. I think we need to go ahead and hit this with a study session and get busy. Again, councils in this city and others historically have approved these large projects. I believe we in the past approved ODPs, official development plans, before these projects could get underway. Is that correct, Mr. Cox?
Well, official development plans are approved through the zoning process.
I'm talking about in the past, before the subdivision ordinance was changed and the zoning ordinance was changed. City Council heard these kind of projects. Was it at the ODP, or what step was that?
The zoning process, which included rezonings to official development, to planned developments or official development plans.
So I think we need to restore council's decisions on these matters, and it will give the public a chance to come in and speak in public hearing and give us ideas or express their concerns that need to be mitigated with these projects. So I'm all for it. Councilman Skilling, thank you for bringing it up, and I think we should go ahead and get with it.
Councilor Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I too agree that this is something that we need to address sooner rather than later. We've been under a lot of pressure in Ward 4 getting projects that folks are very concerned about, increasing our traffic and certainly reducing quality of life. In addition to what other councilors have said, I do want to say that we do have other issues related to this, like setbacks, transition zones. I'm now starting to receive pictures from people who are now getting right next to their single family, single story house, huge 2.5 story cantilevered buildings where we're literally taking folks' sunshine, their ability to have a garden in their own backyard. So there's a lot of things that we'll need to address when we get to our annual planning, and I know these are a lot related there, but I think this particular one falls in line with bringing some things back to council. We're all accountable to you when we come up for election. We're either doing the job you want us to do or not. And certainly there's other folks out there deciding whether they want to run because they may have a different way they want to see govern. But when I walked door to door and knocked on thousands of doors, overdevelopment, encroachment, and development that wasn't appropriate for neighborhoods was the #1 topic. So I just don't think that we can continue to kick this one can down the road. I think we have to talk about it sooner rather than later.
Great. Councilor Roybal?
Thank you, Mayor. I too agree. I think Councilman Skilling has a great point. I think we should move forward with this. I would encourage the other councilors to come on board and let's have a study session on this and let's move this forward and get this done.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. Councilor Skilling, I appreciate the boldness and your courage to take this forward. I appreciate the spirit during this last election, growth and development was 95% of what I heard at the door. We have a tendency to keep putting things off for more and more studies, more and more input. It's time to go forward with this, and I agree with the study session, and I support this. Thank you.
Councilor Harrison?
Having served on Planning Commission in the past, the one thing that I would say is that even though this might have, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a study session and discuss this. There are so many parts and pieces to the zoning ordinances, just as what Barb was talking about, setbacks and whatnot. I'm concerned that if we do this one piece, it might affect other pieces that are part of this discussion. And I really do believe that we need to allow Planning Commission, which is currently working on this, to come back with their recommendations, which this could be part of it. But let's let them kind of do some of they've already been involved in doing, of which we task them to do. I feel like if we pull this away from them, this piece, it's not really fair for what work they've already done. So I would really like us to wait until we get their recommendation. I'm not saying no to this. I'm just saying it's a piece of a really complex part, and I think we ought to give them a chance to be able to give their recommendations to us. Thank you.
For the record, they will. This will have to go to Planning Commission regardless.
But they've got other things that they're going to give us.
Yes, I'm just saying it will have to go back to Planning Commission. Councilor Beat Up.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilor Franks and Skilling and Roybal. I think we need to move this along. We need to make it a priority. I think time's of the essence. This is not complicated at all. What's being proposed here, what's being asked, it's not complex. We just spent $7 million of our taxpayers' money on a fairly complex transaction, real estate transaction, and that went from start to finish as far as being considered by council in a matter of a few weeks. So much more complex than this is, and I see no reason why we can't move this along and get it before council for a vote. Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein?
Thank you. First, just a question. Is it the case that City Council used to vote on? I missed Tim's answer. I think or Mr. Cox. I'm sorry.
The question was, did Council formally approve official development plans from Councilor Abel? And prior to the previous amendments, when the sort of role of ODPs in the zoning process changed a little bit, before that, that was a routine form of rezoning. Any change at the owner's request to the zoning of a property is a matter that would come to City Council, and one way to change the zoning in those days was to submit an official development plan for PD zoning. So it was like rezoning to a residential zone district, a commercial zone district, and it did come to City Council.
So if it was an ODP, it did come to City Council.
Yeah, or any other rezoning.
Or any other rezoning. Okay, thank you. So this is something that certainly our community has been talking about since the Strategic Growth Initiatives proposal. And I think that it's a very important conversation that we have as a community, because there are a lot of questions, and I think it would be great for our community to get real factual answers to these questions. I actually disagree and think this will be a complex issue, because I think it will impact our local economy and impact Lakewood in many different ways. By adding a level of complexity to any proposal that's over 40 units. I want to know what the impacts will be for affordable and attainable housing in our community, which is already a pressing issue for 40% of our population. And I think that some of the things that were mentioned is the design standards, the architectural standards, the feeling of our community growing. And I really wonder if this is going to be the best way to achieve those outcomes and what are the outcomes that we are trying to solve for. Councilor Skilling mentioned incentivizing getting the best project possible and increasing communication with our community. I think those are both great goals that I fully stand behind. And I wonder if this is the best way. Is this the best practice in other communities to increase communication and get the best project possible? So those are the kinds of questions I would like to get answered during a study session as a community, and so that the community can also ask their questions. So I certainly support exploring this option and getting facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. So I absolutely support the study session. I will say that this spending $7 million took actually 3 to 4 years, not just a couple council meetings. And this is complicated because there are takings involved as well, and potential takings. So we need to take it seriously. I welcome the conversation. And in my 10 years on council, almost 11, I've never approved an individual project based on residential units. I've never had anything come before me. So I don't know where that changed or what that's being alluded to, but that's why we need to have the facts out on the table and get a better understanding. And I thought through the building dialogue, residential caps was part of what they were looking at. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I'm looking at Johan, but I thought that was something that they were actually looking at. And we heard testimony earlier tonight that this can be used in a way to help get what you want, and maybe a better way to look at it is through zoning, which makes better sense, I think. So we will go forth and ask City Manager Hodson to schedule this for a study session. I think it's important that we have, prior to this, council submit their questions or their issues, because I think this is going to be a big one. So I'm looking for a way, and maybe council can help me, how we can have a more effective and efficient study session, because there's going to be a lot of questions involved. Councilor Skilling.
So would it be possible, thank you, Mayor, would it be possible to bring in the building commission? We had that big, and I agree, this is a big one. So we had the joint meeting last time. We can bring the commissioners here and have a joint session. If they're working on it simultaneously, the more people working on it, the better. And if there's public comment questions or we have questions, then we can collaborate with them, and we don't have to do everything 2 and 3 times. So if that's possible, that would be great.
I think that's a great question. I know we are scheduled for a joint session coming up at the end of February, early March, potentially with the building dialogue.
Yes, so may I answer? Sorry, I didn't.
Please.
Oh, sorry.
I was looking at you.
So we are planning to come to council with a first reading of the development dialogue on the 26th of February. Our hope is to have second and final reading tentatively for March 26th. The reason for the gap is we have holidays, holidays and other reasons for cancellations. So again, I'll need to talk to our planning director. I'm trying to think, how is the 40 unit limit going to interact with the development dialogue and first hearing of the development dialogue?
So forgive me, I thought part of the request though was to deal with residential caps. And I'm going a little bit out of order because we have a planning commission member here.
Can I interrupt and ask Travis Parker to come to the desk so that together
Parker, I didn't even see you over there. I'm sorry. You could have jumped in 15 minutes ago. Forgive me.
So we'll try to do this together. First, let's talk about the time frame for the development dialogue, and then how this particular proposal with a study session conversation how that would fit, and then the joint meeting with the Planning Commission.
Thank you. So Planning Commission has 5 study sessions scheduled on different topics. They've held 3 of them. The 4th one is this coming Wednesday on parking. And then the final one on January 24th is the housing study session, where they'll be discussing things like residential caps. After those 5 study sessions are wrapped up, they want to have one wrap-up study session among themselves to pull everything together. That's either scheduled for February 7th or February 14th. We're still working on that date. The plan then was to come back for another joint study session with you all to discuss all these issues in late February, early March. Again, a date to be determined. So that was the plan as it stands right now. And it includes a discussion of housing, not necessarily specifically your proposal, Councilor Skilling, but a discussion of housing and how to address these issues.
So with our time frame with that and those issues, I don't know how much overlap, and I guess with the proposal, if you feel comfortable having the conversation in a joint session, then we can add that and we can do a request to Planning Commission as they look at housing, that this be something that they throw into their mix next week.
Next week.
So it's 2 weeks from this Wednesday.
2 weeks.
Our housing discussion. We won't have conducted a lot of research on this specific proposal or the impacts thereof. We've got a lot of research on the issues that Planning Commission has already directed us to look into and counsel. As far as we can, we'll try and add some research before that meeting on the 24th for the Planning Commission so that they can have a discussion about your specific proposal.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Again, so that we're not doing double work, I think that would be something to throw into the mix. I think it's different than residential caps. This is more of, if we're going to have a giant project that's going to come up, is that something the council should approve? I think it is. But that's something that is a little bit different than residential caps, although I think also an important topic. So if we could throw that in there as part of their research, the concern would be if you have a joint study session and this is now another thing that we're doing. I mean, you said 5 topics. We've got parking. I mean, I'm all for those marathons that we go to 1:30 in the morning, but I mean, that would be an incredibly long study session. That would be the concern.
Very much so.
So if we're going to just stay on track with all of those 5 issues the Planning Commission is going to bring as part of the study session, I think that's, I hate to say it, but a priority maybe over my suggestion. And then we can then have this as a standalone, maybe right thereafter. We'll have momentum, we'll be talking about these issues, and then we can have a standalone study session and move forward. How's that?
Sounds good. Ms. Hodson.
I just would agree that this is, putting that particular issue along with all of the other ones will actually be quite complicated and even confusing for folks. So I think we need to give it ample time to have a real focus on that particular proposal. So we'll have to work on the schedule and figure out what comes first and what makes the best sense. And then because we'll be looking for a joint session for those 5 tenants that Travis spoke of, but also maybe a joint session for just the 40-unit cap to go to council. So we'll look at that and put that to paper and see how we can get that done.
So the body meets again in 2 weeks because we are on a holiday next week. So can we have an update on that next? Is it the 22nd? As to scheduling.
Yeah, we can do that. I can do that during my executive report. We'll have put some paper and pencil to this to make it make sense and give all of the topics due time.
Thank you. I think that's great.
Okay.
Just as long as, and I'm going to keep the homework assignment to plan, though, that they, or I guess the Planning Commission, that they add that to their housing. And then, yeah, we shortly thereafter, certainly not 6 months later, but shortly thereafter, especially with all the momentum I think we're going to be building. So,
great.
And I think there are issues that you will be hearing about that the Planning Commission is dealing with now that overlap greatly with this issue. And I think it will help you to have that discussion, that joint study session with Planning Commission, to hear things that they're proposing, like a committee to review design of buildings above a certain size. So these things overlap, and we need to figure out how to integrate it all.
Great.
Thank you for coming down for that. Thank you.
Sorry I didn't see you. Councilor Abel, did you have a comment?
I do. I just want to, I'm going to mix a couple of metaphors here. We have a full plate. But as we're waiting, a lot of water is rushing under that bridge. So we don't want to fill up all our spaces before we get to the business. Thank you.
All right, and the next agenda, it's Counselor Skilling night. Talk to us a little bit about your next one.
So the next proposal was, by way of background, we have our neighbors to the south and west in Morrison that are proposing the, well, perhaps going to be hearing about the disconnection request for the Red Rocks Ranch property, which is close to 400 acres of commercial and residential build-out. The proposal, as I last understood it, from the landowner / developer was to have a disconnection of that property from Morrison and have it go into unincorporated Jeffco. That would be a problem, as I see it, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that that potentially violates the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement that we have with Morrison, which says that we as city and town will do everything in our power, well, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but that we will encourage unincorporated areas to actually annex into the city or town. The corollary of that would be we should discourage a disconnection, which would leave it up to the Jeffco commissioners and Jeffco itself. So far, I don't know a whole lot about Morrison's thinking. They do a lot in executive session. For whatever reason, that's their negotiation with the landowner / developer. That's their prerogative. But I think that we also have a prerogative, and we owe it to our citizens that live down there. And also, this will have a major impact on our open spaces, on Bear Creek Lake Park, on Hayden, on a lot of things. And I think that we need to have a say in the disconnection, and I think we should say that we don't want the disconnection, that it should stay in Morrison, and there's no good reason for it to go in unincorporated. So I want us as a city, and I don't know the procedure behind this, how we do it. I know that Mr. Parker's department and I appreciated our response, our outside referral, which said that we have some issues with this, and I think our ships kind of passed in the night there. I think I had brought this request at the same time you all were doing that referral, and I think if there's something that we can do as a council just to let our voices be heard, if that helps in this process, I'm for that. I don't know if that's a resolution or if it's just me talking on this tape. I don't know. But I would like us to do something that we can let them know that we think this is an issue.
Thank you for that. And I would just say, you know, in the 4 public hearings that we had on the Rooney Valley Master Plan, I heard loud and clear that the community wanted that out of it. They didn't want the annexation to be part of the Rooney Valley Master Plan, and so that was actually pulled. So I am hesitant to tell another independent government what to do with their property and their land, and I'm also don't feel comfortable doing a resolution after hearing so much public testimony that said, pull that out. It's a raw deal for Lakewood. We don't want that to be annexed into the city of Lakewood. Councilor Harrison.
Ditto.
Councilor Abel.
In the case of, I'd like to comment on, I think this is a worthy idea. I also would like us to address the outside referral angle. It often amounts to a policy statement, and council determines policy. And when it reaches that level, I think we should determine the content of our outside referral. That's why they asked us. They asked for an outside referral. It's not that we're telling them what to do. We're taking them up on their invitation to express our opinion. They invited it. They asked for the referral. And I think when it amounts to such important policy issues, that referral should be fashioned by council. Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein.
Mr. Parker, could you tell us a little more about what the referral process is, or whoever the best person is to answer that, and what kind of information goes into that?
Certainly. So when we receive an outside referral, our tradition is not to take a stance in pro or con on the merits of the request. We do a technical review only. We provide feedback on conformance with our plans, on street and road plans, on technical issues. And traditionally, we do not take a position for or against the proposal.
So therefore, you're not making a policy statement.
We do our best to avoid that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then I also want to ditto and say that, during the Rooney Valley Master Plan, one of my main concerns was that if we didn't come to a reasonable agreement as a council and as a city, for the people who have property rights in the Rooney Valley, that they would decide to disconnect and develop through Jefferson County, which I stated during our Ward 5 meetings, and that was a major concern of mine because in Ward 5 we saw a very similar case with the Green Gables development, where they developed through Jefferson County, and it has been a little bit of a frustrating process for our community because we don't have a say. As a council, or we have a say. I have a say as a Jefferson County resident in that process, but not as a city councilor. We don't get to vote on it. And so that was my main concern during the Rooney Valley Master Plan, was why I supported it. And we heard loud and clear that the community did not want that property to develop through Lakewood. And so I'm just a little bit confused about what we're hoping to accomplish here.
Sir. Go ahead.
So just to answer Ms. Goodwine's question there, I think it comes down to, you can separate out the ideology of it and just say, look, we have an IGA with Morrison for a reason. And what they're doing potentially violates that IGA. Certainly, we don't have enough information from them to know at this point whether it will, in fact, whether it comes down to the water, the sewer, different issues in that IGA. So I just want Morrison to know that, look, the project as we know it, which is the disconnection into Jeffco at this point, very well could violate the IGA, which is what Mr. Parker and his department, as I recall from the referral, that was their technical assessment as well, and I agree with that. This is a completely separate issue from Lakewood annexing it. It doesn't have anything to do with Lakewood annexing the property. It has to do with Morrison disconnecting a property. That's what it has to do with. So I'm not suggesting that we have an annexation conversation, just one in which a technical one about the IGA and whether or not their plans are going to violate that.
So with that said, does Mr. Parker and the department's response meet that goal of what you just stated? You just stated that they did say that that is a concern.
If it were possible, and again, and I think I even said in my request, I don't even know what the proper mechanism for this council would be. Whether it's, I don't know, it doesn't really fit in a box of a resolution or an ordinance. That's why I was kind of, when I make the request, say, and I leave it to you all to tell me what the proper way to do this is. But as a political body making policy decisions, I think that this impacts our policy, the same policy that created the IGA and got us to sign the IGA. As stakeholders in that agreement, I think as this body can take a stance one way or another. And that's the discussion that I would like to have, is can this body, not just Mr. Parker's department, but can we make a policy stance on this?
So certainly, I mean, the body, if you know, the majority of the body wants to make that stance. Now, we also have other avenues available to find out more information and to see what happens. We also have the ability to lobby our county commissioners from elected to elected, as well as the Morrison Town Board. And I apologize, I don't have the enough information to really know where they are at in the process. Go ahead.
And that's the part that scares me. I don't either. I look at their notes. I don't have any way of so it's almost we're just kind of shouting into the wind and hoping that they hear us.
Ms. Hodson?
I wonder, I don't know what the
A
answer
lifeline
is
here?
either, but what do you say?
I threw you a lifeline.
Yeah, here's a thought. How about an invitation to have a conversation with both of those governmental agencies, both the town of Morrison and Jefferson County? And the purpose would be just to update us on what they know about activity in the valley. At the same time, we can update them with what we know about activity on the Lakewood side in the valley. And maybe we can share and learn and then have more informed conversations with them as a result of a meeting. What do you think of that?
Go ahead.
And then in the meantime, we do have our referral response, which I think alludes to the issues that I just raised. So Morrison ostensibly has received that and knows our position, at least in general. I think that's a great idea. If they come and talk to us about things, I hope that they don't say everything is attorney-client, say we can't talk about that. But I would love to have that conversation with Morrison.
Fair. So we'll go through the comments, and if that's an acceptable path forward, we'll shift to that as the proposal and see if there's consensus. Councilor LeBeer, how'd I do?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, certainly I agree with what Kathy just said. I would, or Miss Hodson, without the G. I would certainly like to get an update and hear a lot more about whatever. Just get an update of where we are in that. So,
Councilor Beat Up.
Just a question. Do we know that there is a effort afoot to de-annex this property out of Morrison? Do we know that?
Yes, sir. And so we've already expressed our concern via the IGA to as a referral agency, and that goes to, does that go to the town board or does that go to the county commission?
It goes to town staff who present it to the town board.
Okay.
Well, the IGA is with Morrison, so they've already agreed not to de-annex? That's what I don't get.
No, Mr. Parker.
As of now, so they sent us a referral requesting our comments on the proposal to disconnect. We sent them back technical comments, road-related comment. There's annexation issues around Morrison Road. But the substantive comment that we're talking about tonight is we called their attention to a provision in the IGA that says that land that's served by water and sewer, that's served by Morrison Water and Sewer, should be annexed into the city or the town. And we asked them to respond. We didn't say you're definitively out of compliance with it. We just said, here's this statement in the IGA. Please let us know how you see it. And that was a month ago. I don't know what's happened since then or what's happening internally.
You're talking about, in addition, issues regarding the annexation of property into Morrison. That's what I'm understanding you to say.
No, not at all. Not at all. The IGA says that unincorporated land in the valley should be annexed to one or the other if it's to be served by Morrison Water and Sewer. They are talking about disconnecting a land that may or may not eventually be served by Morrison Water and Sewer, which would seem to present a conflict with that section of the IGA. So we called their attention to that, and that was our comment to them.
Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein, you're still on the board.
Thank you. So I guess the reason that I was bringing up the annexation into Lakewood is it may not be relevant to the reason it's relevant to this discussion is that the owners of that property, in order to develop, need to develop in one of our jurisdictions. And so to them, I believe it would be relevant. But the more important issue that I think you raised is that the ultimate goal we have is to make sure that we're all following the IGA. And so I wonder if it would just be a more productive process to, like you suggested, all come to the table and ask for that we all continue to follow the IGA rather than presume ahead of time that they're going to break or violate the IGA when we don't even know that they're going to. So that would be my preference, is that we meet and try to work together.
So I think Councilor Skilling is amenable to that, and if there's consensus, that's the route that we will go.
Yes.
Okay. Is there consensus? All right, so that's the route we will go. So we'll need to get more information from Morrison, and maybe that's a joint meeting. But also, it would be nice to have, whether it's formatted to the council, an update of where they're at or what they're doing, and then how they respond to the IGA question brought forward. You know,
If possible, I would recommend a meeting with the three agencies. So Town of Morrison, Jefferson County, and the City of Lakewood. And this may not fall on a Monday.
yeah, I think that's.
Just a little heads up. Go
ahead, Dave.
Thank you. In the meantime, can we send some kind of a letter to them or ask them what's going on? What's the update? We don't need a novel back from them, but just some kind of an update as to where they are in the process. I know they have posting requirements, but I don't want to have us collectively checking their website every day to find out when they post. It would be nice if we send them a letter, say, hey, can you just let us know what's going on? And then also, of course, do the meeting.
I'm certainly happy to do that, elected to elected, but if you think staff to staff is a better option, that's fine.
If you want to do it elected, and we can follow up from the staff side and just color.
So I'll draft a letter with your help. I'll send it to council, and we'll send it to their mayor and have staff follow up.
That would be fantastic.
Cool. All right. Next up, Councilor Skilling, you're done.
No, wait, I have 5 more.
Councilor Abel.
As was mentioned earlier, I would like to see a committee appointed, one council person from each ward to review and improve our campaign finance ordinance. One only need look at the money that came into the last election to understand that outside influences can have a lot more sway in these elections with the money they throw at it than an individual citizen in Lakewood who has a limited amount of money they can contribute to either a candidate or a candidate for council, $2,500. A candidate for mayor, our maximum is $5,000. But if you are an independent expenditure committee or something like that, you can throw hundreds of thousands of dollars into the race. And I just think there's a better way to handle it. As Ms. Kentner said earlier, for the last 25 or 30 years, I've been trying to get a level playing field for elections in the city of Lakewood, and I think we need to continue to pursue that.
Great. I think that's a great idea. I support it. I supported the last round that we did with some updating. One thing I would ask is, would you be open to adding citizens? Because we got a lot of citizen feedback. We have some smart citizens, and I think
we had 2 citizens attend that last session. Certainly I would like, and they wouldn't take, the 2 citizens that attended, I was one of them, and I attended every session. We didn't get a lot of input in it, and I certainly would like to have input from community members.
So
but I would like the membership of the committee to be council, just as it has always been with our campaign finance. Frankly, we need to address also some issues in the Fair Campaign Practices Act, which was added as an addendum to the newly conceived Campaign Finance Act. And it superseded some other information that still stands alone in our ordinances, including the scheduling and timing of steps and initiatives. So we have conflicting regulations on our books. If you're going to do an initiative and you go look at the initiative ordinance, and you get misled into thinking that those are the rules that apply. It was actually superseded, Mr. Cox, when we adopted the 2012 campaign finance ordinance. Was that the year? But that was superseded when we added the Fair Campaign Practices Act to that campaign finance ordinance. So, but it was never taken off the books. So I think we need to coordinate that as well, to as we're going through this, as things come up that might vary from what's on books in other places in our ordinance, that we remove those as well, so that we don't have confusing information out there.
Certainly, so a holistic approach. So, but you wouldn't be open to adding citizen representatives? Because I heard folks who don't even agree with me brought up some really good points during the
They did, and that's why I would like to have their comments for us.
But not be part of the committee?
No.
Okay. Councilor Franks?
And so I just wanted to second what Charlie was talking about as far as leveling the playing field. I think that maybe some citizens aren't aware that during this last campaign cycle, what I found was really odd is as the money flowed in and people could fund kind of these large email campaigns, what we discovered in one thread was the fact that somebody had bought a list of emails and decided to use those folks to send emails to council. Well, I started responding to each one of those people, basically saying, hey, tell me your thoughts. Let's dig a little bit deeper on this topic, and started getting responses back where I don't even live in your state. I don't know where this is coming from. So I want people to know that why this is so important is those dollars were then buying basically email lists and then sending us fake emails where folks were like, no, I never sent that to you. And I'm like, well, here's your email back to you. I don't even live in your state, wouldn't have a dog in that fight. So these things are important. So we make sure that anybody can run for office. If you've got the desire and the heart and you want to get out and you want to talk to your neighbors and convince them that you've got the path forward, we want to make sure that playing field's level where you have a chance. It doesn't mean the money's going to ever be equal. I mean, that's just not how these things work. Some people, like myself, my father had passed away and I used part of my inheritance to fund my own campaign. But not everybody maybe has those avenues. But I did want folks to know that that's why we're kind of looking at all these different ways of how do you control the money so then we can make sure that everybody who's running in a campaign has an equal chance, because if they get out and talk to enough people, they get an opportunity to then get a vote. So I'm would be very interested in this and would be very interested in being on the actual committee.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. I'm curious to learn more about the fake emails, so I'll have to ask you about that offline.
I sent that out to everybody through Margie.
Oh, yeah. Well, great. So I also really agree that the campaign finance is an issue, not just locally, it's statewide and nationally an issue. And just to give another example, the petition for the Strategic Growth Initiative had over $14,000 worth of canvassing paid for in order to get that initiative on the ballot, which is a significant amount of money, and I'm not quite sure where that money came from. But so it's definitely an important issue, and it raises questions as to motivations and where that money is coming from and all of that stuff. So definitely want to help create a level playing field. Like Councilor Franks said, not everyone is able to self-fund. So that's another issue I'd like to see brought into this discussion. And there's some cities that are doing some form of public funding which I think is very interesting and would like to be part of the discussion. Another thing just on the topic of level playing fields is we haven't ever finished our conversation about term limits and making sure that that's solidified, because that certainly has a big impact in creating a level playing field. And then Councilor Abel, could you just explain why you don't want to have a citizen on that committee? I'm trying to understand what we would lose by having citizen input.
I didn't say I didn't want citizen input. Please don't change my words.
I actually said why you didn't want to have a citizen on the committee.
And you also said why you don't want citizen input.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
Please,
you did.
please direct your answers.
We have a council full of informed folks that one council person from each ward can adequately represent it, and I would wonder why folks who now say, why don't you have a number of citizens on this committee, didn't say that when the last committee met. And although you were not on council, Ms. Gutwein, and Jacob, a lot of these folks were. I do want to address your comment on public financing of campaigns. It's an interesting concept. Boulder does it. Just because Boulder does it doesn't mean that we should do it. However, it is an interesting thought. It does level the playing field. And it takes some of the variables out of it. But it's not that I'm opposed to citizen input. I can just see how agendas could interfere with a sterling product. So I want citizen input. I more than any, or as much as anyone on this council, has encouraged outreach and citizen input. So it is not that I want to ignore what our citizens have to say. We need to get this taken care of. Time runs short. Like I said earlier about another issue, we have a full plate. So I think in the interest of time and efficiency, that the voting members be council members, and we reflect the mandate of the voters in the election. So I think that is the way we should go with it. But I certainly welcome and encourage citizen input.
Thank you. I think you had mentioned earlier that you had participated in the last campaign finance, which I was not a member of council at the time, and felt like you didn't get to have much of a say. So I think it would be great if we did have citizens as a member of the council, or as a member of this committee. And again, I do fully support looking into this and including all the options. Thank you.
Councilor Bida.
Thank you, Mayor. I would echo the comments from Councilor Franks. Having just been through a election myself, I can tell you that the playing field is not level. I can tell you that, as a matter of fact, the amount of funds that were expended in my campaign versus my opponent was something in the neighborhood of 70,000 to about 6,000. That was the difference in the campaign. That's not a level playing field. So and that's just part of it, but that's an important part of it. So I agree that this, and I'm also getting a lot of input from my constituents that they are concerned about that as well. So I do agree, and I think we need to take a good look at this. Thank you.
Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Abel brought up a great point, and I agree with him. I think we should get one counselor per every ward to be on this committee, and to take that back to their constituents and get an update and what they would like to see. Bring it back to the entire body of council and have an open meeting here and have the discussion and hammer out all the details or the pros and the cons right here. And I think that would be a great idea.
Councilor LeBeer.
I would just say that I'm glad Councilman Abel's interested in taking a look at public funds or matching dollars. I think that'll be an important piece if we're really serious about leveling the playing field. I think it'd be difficult, in my experience, from campaigning, if you didn't have a certain level of means, because things add up pretty quick. Even things like filling up your gas tank to get around the neighborhood. So it gets pretty expensive. Yeah, I think, to what Dana or Councilwoman Gutwein said and the mayor, and I think it's important to make sure that we do have citizens' input. And I don't know what that looks like. Maybe that doesn't mean on the committee, or maybe, but maybe it's not just simply input from feedback that we're hearing in the neighborhoods. Maybe there's some other third way out there. I don't know what that looks like, but whether that's soliciting more information, sort of like we did with the planning, with the some of the planning stuff we've done where we built a website and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I want to make sure that we have ample citizens' input on this particular issue, in part because it's polarizing. So I think that will help smooth some of that out, I would think. But thanks.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned term limits in terms of leveling the playing field. I'm sure that Tim Cox can provide you the copies of the documents that my attorney provided the city regarding some case law. You might want to read them. That would be helpful.
Councilor Vincent.
I would just like to say for this committee, I think we should have as much depth and breadth. I mean, we've had people who've been newly elected who had quite a bit of money. And then I know I'm not a good data point, but I, had no money. So I think if we get a mixture on this committee, we can probably identify maybe what works and what doesn't work and get input from all different angles.
So I'm hearing a consensus to move forward with a committee, an ad hoc committee. So I guess send me an email if you'd like to be part of that, and we'll put something together and get it on the agenda to get it set up. And yeah, should be interesting. Politics is tough. It's an unfortunate game when you have to raise money, and that's probably the worst part of it. And it's the worst part, having to call your friends and family and people to say, hey, I'm running for office. You don't even live in Lakewood. Want to give me $50? But it's part of it, and that's the unfortunate part. And I think that, we can always do better. And I look, be bold. What can we do that's above and beyond? What are new ways that people are doing it? Public financing is interesting. And then you always have to remember there's, federal laws that take place, Citizens United, things like that are kind of out of our hands. But I look forward to the conversation, and we will work on that. So send me an email if you're interested, and if there are more than one per ward interested, then we'll have to figure that out. All right, next we have Councilor Gutwein and Councilor LeBear, who co-signed onto this, so I'll let you two take it.
All right, thank you. So just a little background, this is lack of affordable and attainable housing has been identified as a key issue in our community. We see stories about this pretty much daily now in the Sentinel, in the Denver Business Journal. We just had someone come and speak from the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless about the need of homeless services, and the main cause, or one of the key causes, is the rise in cost of housing in the Denver metro area. And just on a personal note, I had the chance to go and volunteer at the Action Center over the holidays, and it was an incredibly moving experience. But one thing that I noticed is, a lot of the people that I had the chance to serve, over 100 families that day, and I don't regularly see them at our council meetings. A lot of these people are working 2 jobs. They are struggling to make ends meet. They're not going to be able to join us at 7 o'clock on a Monday night at a council meeting. And I think it's really important that we as elected officials make sure that all those voices are at the table, and that the decisions that we make are, that the impacts are considered on all of our constituents, not just the people who are able to come here on a Monday night. And so, all that being said, I really want to understand a couple of different things. One is, how are these growth initiatives and anything that we do adopt in terms of what the Planning Commission puts forward, how is that going to impact affordability in Lakewood? And I think it's really important that we take that into account. So that's one piece. And then the second piece is, in our comprehensive plan, one of the outlined goals is to incentivize building attainable housing. And I know that there's a number of different ways that other communities are addressing this critical issue. There's inclusionary zoning, there's requiring, setting aside a fund and having an additional fee. And so I want to understand what the best practices are, what other cities are doing, and what innovative ways we can look at. I know Councilor Franks has mentioned this a number of times about tiny homes. I think that's a really interesting idea that would that could potentially help with this issue. So to that end, I think it would be great if we could have Metro West come back again. We have some new members on council. That way people can really understand what the challenges that some of our community, and just one statistic is 43.6% of households in Lakewood would income qualify for affordable housing. That's almost half of our community. So, just to understand the needs in our community, what best practices are, and what options we can do. So I had said a study session, but I think this is kind of similar to some of Councilor Skilling's proposals, where this really ties into the development dialogue. It also ties into the housing study. So I'm not sure what the best way forward is.
So if I might, I'm going to go to Councilor LeBeer. He signed on to this, and I want to give him a chance to address it.
I would just add that this issue is near and dear to my heart, not only because it's a really important issue in our ward and the city as a whole, and also the metro area in Colorado. It's a major issue that people are dealing with, where they're not able to find a place to live, which I think is troubling, especially in the country that we live in. And when I was knocking doors, I met people who were formerly homeless, who had told me that they really loved living in Lakewood, and they were happy after I was knocking on their door, and they answered, and we were talking for a little bit, and I was asking them what their concerns were. And one person in particular really stuck out. She was formerly homeless, and she had gotten into some housing, and she was concerned that with the prices going up, that she was going to have to move out of Lakewood. And she was hoping that she'd be able to get in on some sort of voucher list before that happened. And so that sticks with me a lot, because I personally used to be homeless, and I've slept in my car before with my mom sleeping next to me. And so I think it's really important to make sure that people have a place to call home. And so when Councilwoman Gutwein brought this to me, it's really important that, for me, that I understand this issue and how we can address it. And so as soon as we can, I hope that I can learn as much as possible about ways that we can tackle the issue. So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. That's powerful, sharing your personal experience. I know that can't be easy. Councilor Abel.
I too have spent a number of nights in my car, or somebody else's car, when I couldn't afford a car. Getting through school on your own is a heck of a thing to try to do. I couldn't agree more that we need to find a way to make housing affordable and attainable. No one's building affordable and attainable housing. No one's encouraging them to do so. I think that we could do such things as I mentioned in the legislative breakfast the other day, when someone's putting in a high-end market rate apartment complex, have them add 2 or 3 affordable units. There are a number of creative ways that we could do this, but we have to do this. As the fellow from the coalition said, there are 200 and some odd homeless families in this city. And when you see somebody out there sleeping on the street or in a ditch with a sleeping bag, they probably have a day job, but they cannot afford any shelter at all. The figures we have on the homeless, how many there are, where they are, what their accommodations are, they're not reliable, because you have to go out there first and find the homeless, and the way they survive is by evading detection. The families are my biggest concern, but we also have something in the neighborhood of 1,200 homeless students in Jefferson County, emancipated for whatever reasons. So the need is there. The need is not being met. Builders aren't addressing the issue. I think governments aren't addressing the issue. We need to put in some measures that will require affordable housing. One of the things about the initiative that a lot of folks don't endorse is that it does require permits for affordable housing, and City Council would set the number of those. I'm not saying that that's the answer, but we need to find the answer, and hopefully maybe not just one study session, but a series of them. Denver's doing wonders with tiny houses in their own homeless shelters and or in their homeless areas, and I think that could be a solution. There could be a number of solutions out there. The city owns a couple of houses over on Cody Court, that used to be Head Start facilities, and they're sitting there empty and boarded up. I think if we look at all the possibilities, we can alleviate a significant portion of the problem. We won't be able to get rid of it, but I agree, and I applaud both Councilwoman Gutwein and Councilman LeBure for bringing this to the forefront. Thank you.
Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. Boy, Councilor Abel's still in my thunder. Oh, my goodness. Well, you know, in Ward 3, we have $40,000 modular homes up to $2.5 million homes, and they're in the same neighborhood. We have Belmar, we have residential housing, we have farming, we have ranching. So we have such a diverse neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, the question that I would ask, and I always ask people, what's the definition of affordable housing? And the way I would look at it is I would say, is affordable housing $450,000? Is it $350,000? Is it $250,000? Is it $100,000? And then when you go back to the developers and you ask them, can you please build affordable housing for the folks that, you know, the average folks that could come in and have a house for a reasonable price? And again, time is money for them. And so in essence, there has to be some kind of incentive for them to come in to build those affordable housing, because the market right now is at an all-time high. They're building $450,000 homes. So when you say affordable housing, and what bracket are you asking in the city to come in and build? That's the number one question that we need to ask ourselves, and that's the demand. Where is that demand at? And where we're at. In Ward 3, thank you, West Metro Housing Solution. They are moving forward. They are helping us with our housing needs, especially on Harlan and Alameda. They have 2 big complexes that are going up here, and they should be done in a few months, we're hoping. And that'll help address some of those needs. But that's just a drop in a bucket in the area, and that's subsidized housing. So the question now becomes again, the city is landlocked. We only have so much amount of undeveloped land to develop it. How are we going to develop that? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Thank you.
Councilor Skilling?
I think some of what I was talking about earlier with some of the other projects and having specific, whether it be joint meetings or having some specifics. The Metro West presentation is fine. It was great. But I think we're beyond that at this point. I don't need a presentation to tell me that we need more attainable housing or affordable housing. I don't need any more of that. What I need is somebody, whether it's an EDC person or somebody, to come in and say, okay, you want to build affordable housing or incentivize folks to do it, here's how you do it. Here's a specific, actual specifics. Here's examples of how other people have done it. Here's what we can do within the law. We've had this constant battle between, you've got conservationists such as myself that don't want to see development on land, like the open space. But we have other parts of the city that are craving, somebody please come in here and develop this land. We've had a shopping center sitting empty, whatever it is. This would be great, as Pete was alluding to, this would be fantastic to have some kind of affordable housing, Metro West, whoever it is. But we need to figure out how we would do that. How do you incentivize people to come in and do an infill project? And I don't know, but I know that we do talk a lot about it, and we get a lot of studies about it, but now I think it's time to move it forward. And I'm probably, again, pie in the sky, but if there's some way to actually get specifics, how do you do it? Here's the plan. And whether you guys like it or you don't like it or it's a good idea or a bad idea, at least here's the specific ways. Here's some funding mechanisms, whatever it is. I just think if we're going to do a study session, which we have to do at this point, we really need to do it and talk about it. Let's just get the right people in here, line up a bunch of experts and come in and talk about it.
And to that point, that's exactly what the housing study was coming back with. And unfortunately, it's been pushed and pushed and pushed because of other items of interest to council. But that is exactly what the housing study, the last part is to come back with policy recommendations.
That's right.
And, you know, there are a lot of different ways that you can do it. Boulder has been subsidizing at a high extent, as well as the city and county of Denver. There is a formula, if you remember, Metro West was here. Councilor Roy Ballin talked about the formula for what affordable is. It's 30%, and it goes from there. So that formula is in place. We are aware of that. And so it's just a matter of what policy decisions does council want to do? How bold do you want to be? Do you want to require certain amount per foot of a new development has to go to affordable? There's a lot of different things, and you just got to hash it out. Ms. Hodson, you wanted to weigh in.
Only to say on March 5th, we plan to have part of the conclusion of the housing study, and that includes the policy implementation strategy. So these will tie together very nicely with those recommendations as it relates to housing. So my recommendation is to wait until March 5th, and we'll tie these this recommendation of the affordable attainable housing into the housing study conversation.
That works for me. Jacob, what do you think? Or, I'm sorry, Councilor LeBure.
Great, Dana.
Councilor Vincent, do you want to?
I did want to say something. Part of the discussion when we talk about the affordable housing is going to be where it's located in the city now. Okay, so we can see where that's spaced out and where the new projects are coming into, because I think we've got 3 of them in Ward 2. Right. So, okay, thank you.
Councilor Abel.
So, Ms. Hodson, the way I understand it, March 5th, you, Mr. Parker, and our staff are going to come back with the magical answer of how we solve this problem, and I appreciate your input. Thank you.
You are welcome, sir.
All right. Anything else under general business? Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I had turned into policy recommendation or 2 council recommendations. One we're acting on, the shopping carts. The other was for us to at least have some kind of presentation regarding the impacts and options for the city now that the Arapahoe House is closed. And I don't want to see that fall between the cracks. As you mentioned, we were the biggest user of Arapahoe House. We need to know how to go forward with this and what we're doing with that.
Certainly. So that was not presented tonight because of the cutoff when it was submitted. It wasn't put in time for this, so it was going to be on the January 22nd. But in the meantime, we can get council an update on the ordinance that we passed for funding, as well as maybe a little white paper about how that's going. It's going to be a permanent ask year to year for funding on Arapahoe House. And we can get that out, and then we can have that discussion on the 22nd as well.
Just a matter of clarification, I submitted them both in at the very same time.
Certainly. And they didn't meet the cutoff for the packets, which is, I think, 2 weeks before. Okay. Anything else? All right. Ms. Hodson, executive report.
Yes, I'll make this brief. Okay, first of all, so excited that we will have the Vernon Taylor property in our possession. So I personally want to thank you for that decision. It's very meaningful and it reflects a lot of work. Also, we have our annual planning session scheduled for February 17th. 2018. It'll be down at the Heritage Center in the Orchard Room, the same location that it's been held, I think, the last couple of years. I had the privilege to meet with Councilor Harrison and Councilor Skilling, and we went through and made some modifications and put together a rough outline, and I wanted just to express this to you now and let you know briefly what the plan is. We will hire the facilitator that we've used the last couple of years, and that is Heather Bergman. She seemed very competent. I've gotten great response from all of you, and one of the real advantages to Miss Bergman is the fact that she submits overviews of what happened at the retreat, so all of us have that, and so that's a real nice advantage to what she does. We will have one presentation from an outside individual, and he is a PhD professor at CSU. His name is Martin Carsasson, and he's a professor at the Communication Studies Department of CSU in Fort Collins. He's also the founder and director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation, and he's the current chair of the board of directors of the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation. I've had the opportunity to hear him speak at the CML conference. Maybe some of you attended as well. Very interesting. He specializes in what he calls, don't let this scare you, but he specializes in what he calls wicked problems, which are problems that communities all over the world are dealing with, where there aren't easy answers, and people have to give and take. And he has kind of a new method for, and it's very scientific, for dealing with some real complicated, complex issues in a community. He'll speak, I think, for about an hour and a half. And then I'll do a presentation which gives us an update on all of the work we've done, all the work that's still on the table that needs to be done in terms of topics and agenda items. And that'll set the stage nicely for the afternoon. We'll start a conversation about all of your priorities for 2018. And we'll bring that to consensus and do some prioritizing, and then we'll be done. Our hope is that the product of this particular planning session will be a strategic plan that really outlines our priorities for moving forward in 2018. So I'm really looking forward to that. So we have less kind of chaos and less topics that come and go and things that take priority over others, and we'll have just a real solid plan that every time a new issue comes up, you all decide where does that fit in the plan that we have in place. You will get an email from the mayor that'll give you some homework. So one of those pieces of homework is, rather than have our state demographer take time at the retreat to do a presentation, we've asked that individual to make that presentation in written form. So part of your homework is to read that report that they provide, so that you can be updated on who's living in Lakewood and what are some of the trends that we're seeing as it relates to our constituents. We will also provide you the summary and priorities from the 2017 retreat. We'll redistribute those to you so that you can kind of get acclimated, remind yourselves. And finally, we'll ask you to put together your priorities for 2018 and what's important to you and what do you want to see accomplished. So how does that sound? If you have any questions or concerns, like to make any additions or modifications, you're more than welcome to talk to Councilors Harrison and Skilling. and
to clarify, they assign the homework.
Oh, okay,
Right.
yeah.
They assign
the homework,
They're
and
both over here.
and certainly you can come to me as well if you have feedback. So, thank you for that. Finally, I just wanted to mention publicly that the Lakewood Police Department sent several representatives to Deputy Sheriff Parrish's funeral, and our police department did a lot of work with the procession and also with the color guard activities, so that the folks closer to the Douglas County and the Castle Rock Police could spend more time with the family and with each other and be more in the heart of the activities. And our men and women of our police department did that with great pride. And it is never easy, ever, for in the law enforcement family across our state to have something like this happen. So they did it with heavy hearts, but certainly with pride to be a part of the memorial service. So I just wanted to let you know that and to recognize these men and women who served this community so well. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to council reports. I'll start all the way on my left. Councilor Roybal.
No report.
Councilor Abel.
Wednesday evening at 6:30, we'll have the what may be the last workshop session in our quest for a new policies and procedures manual, which will hopefully alleviate a lot of discord. And so I would like to invite the public to attend. Again, keep an eye on us in our deliberations, and I think we'll be a lot more responsive. Thank you.
Councilor Harrison.
I just wanted to say what a great Ward 5 meeting we had this last Saturday. We had a discussion about how fees are charged, how developers pay fees, how those are created, and we had 55 people show up. The ending was a little bit exciting, and for those who attended, you'll know what I'm talking about. All is well. And I'm not going to say any more than that. Those people who attended and would know what I'm talking about will know, and we'll just leave it that all is well. Thank you.
Councilor Skilling.
Thank you, Mayor. This morning, the mayor and I attended the Rooney Ranch ribbon cutting of their new playground, Phase 1, and it was fantastic. They had an amazing turnout. The kids were out of their minds, probably because they had 3 recesses that day. But they were, that was something. I was really happy that they invited us to be there. That PTA is very aggressive, but in the best possible way that you can say that, because you can tell that they care and you can see the results. That they can come and give us some lessons, because that was 0 to 60, getting nothing to that playground in a short amount of time. So they should be commended for that. All of the parents and the PTA there should be commended. And I was saving this for the end, and I am going to also thank Kathy Hodson for the Taylor property, but I was going to do it after everybody, so that and the reason that I was going to say that is because I knew I was going to be a pain tonight, and so I was going to say thank you for putting up with my request. So I appreciate that, and thank you, Mr. Parker and Mr. Cox, for putting up with it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor LeBeer.
I just want to comment just briefly on just some of the stuff I mentioned earlier about affordable housing. I just want to clarify that when I say affordable housing, not only do I mean the official definition of affordable housing, but I also just mean people with average incomes being able to just buy a home. So I just want to clarify that point, because if I were buying my home today, I don't know if I could buy it. But I got it 5-6 years ago. It's doubled in price. So I just want to clarify that, just so people know that I'm also talking about just and I had to clarify this. I typed it up so I had to remember it. Extraordinary people, not average people. Extraordinary people with average incomes. I want to make sure they can buy a home. So also, I just want to mention real fast, the lights are once again illuminated on the Lakewood welcome signs as you come into Colfax and Sheridan. And so I just want to thank everybody who made that happen. The mayor, Councilor Vincent, our city manager, and I'm sure, well, I know there's a lot of other people involved with that. And frankly, I'm not going to thank myself, because I literally had nothing to do with it. And even though I could jokingly take credit for it, but I'm not going to do that. So thank you to those who did make that happen. So thanks. And the Taylor property, I should mention, yes, that's an amazing thing. One of the big things I was an advocate for is open space and parks, and this sort of adds to our just great things about Lakewood. So I'm excited about that too. And then our neighborhood 2 Creeks sign near 10th and Sheridan was refinished. I'm happy to see that. I want to thank our city manager for helping with that. I wish I could show all of you a photo right now, because it's really, really nice looking. My expectations were exceeded, so thank you. So yeah, and if I would also encourage the residents, if you see issues like that, like the sign that was defaced near 10th and Sheridan, I would recommend you go to lakewood.org /request Lakewood. That way we can keep track of these issues and address them, keep the community looking nice. Also, I would just mention sections of concrete park paths will be replaced in the coming weeks in O'Kane Park. I'm excited about that. I think that's a good rehabilitation project that I hope our residents in O'Kane Park will enjoy, and those who visit the park. Finally, winter is seemingly never arriving. It's probably a good time to start thinking about spring coming around the corner. And with that, I just want to remind people that Denver Urban Gardens, which serves the metro Denver area, that includes Lakewood, has a distribution center in Lakewood. And if you want low-cost seeds and learn how to garden, you may want to check them out at dug.org. So thanks.
Cool. Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. Want to add a couple things about our Ward 5 meeting. One is to just really thank Jay Hutchinson for being at our meeting. He did an absolutely amazing job communicating with our community and allowing them to ask questions about, how does infrastructure get built with a new development, and then how does that cost get shared for arterial streets and all kinds of things that it was just a really great opportunity for our community to come and get answers to questions. So really thank him for the time that he took to be there. And then just wanted to add a little bit to Karen's kind of mystery, was that we unfortunately had a constituent who had a health issue, and we called West Metro, who came to the rescue. And thank you, Councilor Harrison, for reaching out, and he is doing well. So just wanted to say that. And like Councilor Skilling, I didn't say thank you yet to Kathy Hodgson and Kit Newland. And I'm embarrassed that I missed that earlier in our wave of thank yous. But want to say it again anyway, because this is one of the greatest things for our city, and that will probably happen, and for sure in the 8 years that I'm going to be around, taking some things into for granted there. But anyway, the point is that it's just absolutely amazing, and it wouldn't have happened without you and our incredible staff. So thank you on behalf of Ward 5.
Councilor Franks.
Just wanted to remind everybody of our upcoming meeting this Saturday, January the 13th at Green Mountain Presbyterian Church from 9:30 to 11. This particular meeting, we have a guest speaker, Mr. Stephen Bell, the Chief Operating Officer with Jeffco Public Schools, along with Amanda Stevens, who's one of their board members for the school. They're going to be talking about a presentation on development and the impacts of development on the school system, and then they'll take some questions, and that'll roughly be about half of our meeting. And then the second half we will have for an open forum. So definitely want to invite you all to come out. We would appreciate your attendance, and that means anybody from any ward. The other thing I wanted to mention to folks is I really appreciate those folks that reached out to me and let me know about the light being out at the corner of Jewel and Wright Street. Just so folks know, that turned out to be a very difficult problem to troubleshoot and an issue to repair, so it took a long time. And just wanted to let city staff know that in the future, if we can require more visible signage, we had multiple near misses and some that could have led to fatalities. Pedestrians, where folks would just, I guess, not understand that if it's a dark intersection, stop, they just blew on through that. And we had several people who walk, jog, and who were driving in the area who definitely could have been seriously injured. And we started out with some very small blinky signs. And so I think in the future for those kinds of intersections, if we can increase from day one, make that a larger presence, I think that'll just add some safety to the whole equation. But we appreciate everything that everybody did do. We saw repeatedly 3 or 4 times folks were out working on it. So thank you.
Councilor Bida.
No report.
Councilor Vincent.
The Ward 2 meeting will be 7:30 Wednesday at 1580 Teller. And on a personal note, I liked a lot of the conversation that we had today about bringing information forward. I thought it was very good, and everybody got a chance to express their opinions, and it was a good interaction. I'm also glad to know that I was not the only female working on an oil field, multiple oil fields. We will have to talk. It's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Kathy, I too would like to thank you for the time and effort and thought that went into the Taylor property. It will be your legacy because it will be with us forever, really. Thank you. And I'd also like to thank the mayor. He came to Ward 1 this last Saturday and gave everybody a short update on the Denver Federal Center. Very appreciated. Thank you. I know you're busy. And also I'd like to thank our police department. Dutch Smith and Jen Doherty, and I believe it was John Ho, came and gave us a very nice presentation regarding some of the auto theft and trespass. We had a record turnout of about 70, I believe. And I think that people, when they saw the agenda, that's why they came. So very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. And you did. You had a heck of a turnout. It was very cool. So we have now started into where our committee assignments are done. So hopefully as your committees start to meet, I'd love to have you come back and talk about what you're doing, what you're looking at. We kicked off the legislative committee on Friday morning, and those members are Councilor Johnson, Councilor LeBeer, Councilor Bida, Councilor Skilling, and Councilor Gutwein, and they will be the ones tasked with going through state legislation and working with our state representatives as their session kicks off tomorrow, which is always a little bit sketchy for everybody in the state of Colorado when the state legislature is in session. And our two main things at the city level are unfunded mandates as well as home rule, are both things that we protect. So we look forward to more updates as those happen and any other committees that you may be serving on. Congratulations to Denison Elementary for their second Blue Ribbon School Award. They were awarded it for the 2017 year. And Councilmember Gutwein and I got to go out to their celebration. That was really cool. So Davini won it a couple years ago. Denison won it. It's a really cool honor. It's a very prestigious award. I'd like to thank the Elks, and I'd like to ask for your help. So the Lakewood Elks Lodge at 1455 Newland has agreed to be the severe weather shelter warming site for our homeless. So on nights when it gets below, I want to say 38 degrees or there's precipitation in the forecast, that site will be open from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. and that's where the homeless will go. They're pre-screened, but they'll be able to have some coffee, hot chocolate, and then a van comes and picks them up and takes them to local churches where they spend the night. So it's been a challenge for us to find a warming site, and thank you so much for the Elks for stepping up. They need 42 volunteers. They have 30 right now. So please, if you know anybody who's interested, you can go to www.swshelternetwork.com and get more information, or just reach out to us. It would be fantastic to see this as a success this year, and support the Elks, who really, you can imagine that's probably a little bit uncomfortable for an organization to take something like that on. They used to have it at the Whitlock Center, but because of the programming and the children that were there, we couldn't have it at the Whitlock anymore. So please, we would love to see great support for this. On that note, Mag Stripmatter will be leaving the Action Center, and her farewell is tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Action Center. Meg has kind of fostered and guided the Action Center into a whole new era. Their program services, their self-shopping, self-selection, and she always brought a great sense of compassion as her previous experience of living on the edge and not having, not knowing where their next meal was growing up. She's going to Albuquerque to run a food bank, the Roadrunner Food Bank, and we wish her all of the best. And she will be a tough one to replace, but she's been a great partner to the city of Lakewood and all of Jefferson County. And last but certainly not least, I would like to thank Agent Hipwell, who's trying to stay awake back there. Just kidding. Thank you for hanging out with us, keeping us safe, and we will adjourn at 10:41 p.m.